All right, welcome. We're live. Dr. Carr, hi. Welcome to
Hey,
In Class. In Class with Dr. Carr, with Greg Carr. I'm Karen Hunter. We're here. I want to first thank everybody for showing up.
yes,
Thank y'all. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world.
thank
Uh,
you.
don't forget to show us the love with the thumbs up and everything. All of you who are
Right.
here. I know we're going to be talking about Hank Aaron. Um, as right before today we came in, Larry King uh, passed over. Yeah, Larry.
Oh, I didn't see that. That happened this morning.
Yeah, yeah. I know he had COVID. They're not saying he died from COVID, but
Mm.
we're still in a pandemic.
A
Um,
whole pandemic.
yeah, and if you're part of QAnon, I know you thought it was a hoax, but we're heading quickly towards 500,000 people dead.
Wow.
And then yesterday we lost a great ancestor in Hank Aaron. But I wanted to frame because we were going to talk before inauguration about the 1776 project. Um,
You gave me homework. I want y'all to know this professor right here has got me going back to school. Y'all talking about y'all in the class. I'm in class too. I'm in class with myself with Professor Hunter. And
but
I'm grateful for it.
but haven't we been living through the 1776 project all along? It's just to me it was like you already messed with the textbooks. You've already indoctrinated people into a way of thinking about the world that you wanted them to think about it that way. But I wanted to start off with playing you a piece of audio from one night in Miami,
Oh,
because I think foundationally for everybody who is in here, and even if you're not from America, this is the lens through which they see us. And
hmm.
it's our job to make sure that we frame our own trajectory, right? So I'm gonna play this. Is very early on in One Night in Miami. It features the Jim Brown character played by Aldous Hodge. Bo Bridges is the voice that you'll hear, the first voice that you'll hear. I'm gonna play it. I'm starting now.
Would you look at who's on my porch? James Nathaniel Brown.
Hello there, Mr. Carlton.
Don't you hello me. Put it there, son. Come now. Have a seat with me. Can I get you something to drink? Lemonade, maybe?
Oh, that's all right. Thank you.
Well, suit yourself. I'm certainly having me some. Fetch us a couple of glasses of that lemonade, would you, sweetie? In case you change your mind. How long you been back on the island?
I just got in last night.
And you came by to say hello. How thoughtful of you, Jimmy.
Well, my aunt said you were anxious to see me. I'm an early riser, so I thought I'd come right on over.
Early bird doesn't catch the worm. But you already know that. You caught a hell of a lot of worms this year.
Guess you can say that.
No man who's run 1,860 yards in a season needs to be so humble.
Actually, it was 1,863.
No, that's more like it.
Mm-hmm.
That record is going to stand the test of time.
I'd happily give that record back for a win over the Packers in that last game.
That Packers win is going to be forgotten by anyone who doesn't live in Goose Bay by tomorrow. Your record is going to be remembered forever.
I don't see why I can't have the record and the win next time.
Right you are, son. Right you are. Jimmy, I just wanted to let you know that if there's ever anything I can do for you, you should never hesitate to reach out.
That's mighty kind of you, sir.
Our families go way back. Been looking after one another since the first folks settled on this island. Now I wanted to make sure that I told you face to face. As long as I'm still here, that ain't ever going to change.
Well, my aunt would be very happy to hear such a kind sentiment from you, Mr. Carlton. Not everyone else on the island has been so supportive.
Crabs in a barrel, I say. The hell with them all. I, for one, think that you are a credit not only to this community, but to the entire state of Georgia. I've never been prouder to say that I live on St. Simon's Island than I am now. And I would make a point of adding a place where the great Jim Brown is from.
Here you boys go. 2 lemonades.
Thank you, darling.
Well, thank you.
Sorry to bother you while you're entertaining, Grandpa, but if you could come move that bureau when you have a moment.
Oh, sorry. I almost forgot.
You, moving some furniture?
Mm-hmm.
You should let me help you with that.
So considerate of you, Jimmy, but we don't allow niggas in the house, so it's quite all right.
St. Simon's Island, I did a little research, and in 1800s there was it was a pathway on the transatlantic slave triangle. A ship landed in St. Simon's Island, which is near Georgia or in Georgia. 1803, Igbo people took control of their slave ship and refused to submit to slavery in the United States. I just want to pause for a second. When Jim Brown is on the porch, it was a giant porch on this man's property, on his home, so he's having lemonade. It's a nice conversation that they're having. Our people have always looked out for each other. And I'm imagining, since we got here, that there's a slave bondage master relationship, servant, subordinate master relationship. Jim Brown gets up to help move the furniture. And in the most affable way, Bo Bridges, that character, looks at him and smiles. We don't let niggas in the house. I feel like America has been saying that to us, and we just haven't been listening. You can love us singing and dancing and playing football and basketball. You can let us suckle your children or demand that we do. Clean your house, wipe your ass, put out your, but we don't let niggas in the house. And I think we kind of understood that with the insurrection, January 6th, that there are different ways in which people are viewed and perceived and treated, as we saw person after person get a slap on the wrist for disorderly conduct when they actually committed treason. I just feel like, everything that we do moving forward has to be in the framework of understanding that they don't let niggas in the house.
How about that? Or as Malcolm said famously in one of his speeches, if they are not going to allow people into the house, perhaps they shouldn't have a house. Perhaps it should burn down.
Common theme, Martin, I fear I've integrated my people into a burning house. I mean, it's just a common theme as we, and the importance of having discussions like this through a different lens, that scene right there. If I didn't watch anything else in One Night in Miami, set me on my ass, because it was the way in which the Bo Bridges character, I don't know who wrote those lines. Shout out to Regina King for directing it. But it was almost like matter of fact. We don't let y'all in the house. What?
It's very interesting, Karen, that we had a little bit of a conversation and you talked to the cast, and we talked about it a little bit last week. And, Dr. King, in the last chapter, in the last book he wrote, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? The name of that chapter, the title of that chapter is The World House. King's problem, the thing that got him killed, and everybody from the King family, Coretta Scott King, Dexter has written about it actually in his memoir, Growing Up King, to Judge Joe Brown, who sat as the judge in Memphis over an attempt to bring new evidence to light in the James Earl Ray case. Nobody believes James Earl Ray killed Martin King. Those files are allegedly the FBI files are supposed to be unsealed, in 2027 or something like that. I guess this new FBI Martin Luther King documentary talks about it. And I know that you interviewed. You talked to. I want to hear about that. You talk. Who did you talk to, Karen, during the week?
Don't make me.
Was it the brother?
Yeah, it was the brother. It was the brother who did Eye on the Prize.
Yeah, that's the man.
I mean, he's an amazing documentarian.
That's the man. But
did the 4 little girls. He's he's got a
lot of work. No, it'll come to one of us in a minute, or somebody drop it in the chat as folks are talking. But the point is that Dr. King was a victim of what Black folk have always been a victim of in these settler colonies turned states or countries. And there are different labels we can use for it. By the time Martin King comes along, I guess we could use the broad term internationalism. We've never been citizens of any one place, particularly in the Western Hemisphere. We've always looked beyond where we were, even as we laser focused on where we are in terms of our day-to-day existence. But we've never had an allegiance to any of these settler colonies that transcended our allegiance to right and wrong and to each other. And it's very interesting. I mean, and we're going to talk about Henry Aaron, and I think probably what will end up happening is we're going to be switching back and forth and stitching all this in and out because, thinking about Howard Bryant, our brother Howard Bryant, the great sports writer, who has written, as far as I'm concerned, the best single book not authored by Henry Aaron, who has a couple of memoirs. I mean, they're obligatory sports memoirs that he co-authored. Really, people ghost wrote back in the 50s and 60s, Aaron, things like that. And then the big one that he is credited with authoring with a sports writer. I Had a Hammer, because that was his nickname, Hammerin. The Hammer. We know Fred Williamson was the Hammer, and we know Henry Aaron was the Hammer. And so
Hammerin Hank.
Yes, I mean, Fred Williamson, a legend in his own right, but he was the Hammer in the movies. Henry Aaron was the Hammer in real life. So but
before we go into Hank Aaron,
I'm gonna tie it to what we're talking about right now.
No, I know. I just want to just put one little point on there because when we go down these rabbit holes, and this is the point I think of us coming together, is just dropping these gems. Michael Harriot said, we'll mention something in passing that will send you on a whole ass journey, which is important. That's important. But St. Simon Island. I think about the people who come from that area and, that famous 1803, I'm going to call it another uprising or resistance where Igbo people that they were bringing there to sell off at an auction block decided they were going to hijack this ship, and then they committed suicide before they would be put into bondage. And I think about the lines people draw and what they're willing to do to be free. And what is real freedom, and what's the cost of that? I am not going to be your slave. I will take my own life, and we will all sail off into the great beyond before we allow that. And I'm just, we're in a time right now, and I don't know, where people's lines are, but I think, we really have to start to contemplate what is the cost of freedom and what are we willing to do to have it, and Jim Brown sitting there, with that literal slap in the face, coming from that place with those people. He's from those same people.
That's right. That's right.
I'm thinking about that. So.
No, don't listen. And every week we have a rhythm, and don't leave me, because I think I love the conversation, because it's in our conversation that we begin to weave together narratives that allow us to recover the memory, to make the connections. And I really think, in addition to everything else, but maybe everything else is secondary to this, the content, the book lists, the things we're working on, to enhance things like that. It's the connections.
It's the remembering.
That's right.
You're remembering.
Go ahead now. Come on, you're going to make me reach over here to one of my textbooks. My man, the great Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Something Torn and New. This is the Kenyan brother. People talk, that's why I don't like that ADOS business. Oh, y'all don't get out of that descendants of slaves. You ain't descendants of slaves, you're descendants of human beings who came from Africa. But this brother, who I had the pleasure to meet a couple of times, in fact, we brought him to campus because we read this book. Our Philadelphia Freedom Schools read this book when it first came out in 2005. And then we assigned it to all the freshmen at Howard University's College of Arts and Sciences. And we invited Professor Ngugi, and he came. Never forget. In fact, that's Ngugi, in this book, there are 4 small chapters, but the center of this book is what you just said, Karen, remembering. He said the dismemberment of Africa took place in 2 ways. There was the physical separation of our ancestors from the continent. And then he says there was the psychological, the cultural in fact, let me just read it. Page 5. The dismemberment of Africa occurred in 2 stages. During the first of these, the African personhood was divided into 2 halves, the continent and the diaspora. African slaves, the central commodity in the mercantile phase of capitalism, form the basis of the sugar, cotton, and tobacco plantations in the Caribbean and American mainlands. If we accept that slave trade and plantation slavery provided the primary accumulation of capital that made European industrial revolution possible, we cannot escape the irony that the very needs of that industrial revolution, this is what you just said about what they want from us, markets for finished goods, sources of raw materials, and strategic requirements in the defense of trade routes, led inexorably to the second stage of the dismemberment of the continent. Then he goes into the Berlin Conference, then he goes but he says the second stage is the dismemberment of our memory, the dismemberment of our connection. And so he spends the rest of this book in one way or the other talking about the word you just evoked, remembering. How do we remember? So it isn't just the act of individuals recalling things. Okay, how do we reconnect? How do we reforge a bond that was not a bond? Because we were taken from all over this continent, which is why the title of his book is Something Torn and New. Because the new thing is going to be us making something out of the remembering. So I just wanted to mention that when you said remembering, but the Jim Brown, the clip from Brother Hodge and Bridges, and the fact that you put Jim Brown on the Sea Islands of Georgia and South Carolina and connect him to that act of resistance, the Igbo resistance, 1803. And that is a well evoked marker for Igbo identity in that region, as we have taken it into the larger narrative of Black memory in the so-called modern world. The idea that the Igbo, and in some places, there's Igbo landing. I mean, there's a number of, but the Igbo chose returning to eternity, going literally into the water, and some tellings walking back into the water. Virginia Hamilton's children were the people who thought they could fly. The idea that we can return to Africa, we can return to identity. My dear brother Daniel Black down at Clark Atlanta University, in his novel The Coming, which I think I have around here, because actually, no, I don't know what I did with The Coming. It's around here somewhere. Anyway, who talks about this idea of return. That return is a spiritual return. We'll give our bodies up. We'll shed these bodies and go back. As the old spiritual goes, as it echoes into that, before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my God and be free. That is very much in the spirit of resistance. And so Jim Brown is raised in that community. And it's interesting because we're going to hear a lot about Henry Aaron over the next few days, and a great deal of it in white-facing media and white media, commercial news, entertainment media, is going to be from the Jeff Bridges side. This is what Hank did for us. And thinking about the curriculum framework that we wrote for the Philadelphia Mandatory African American History class. And let's all understand something about curriculum. It's only as good as it is used in a classroom. And of course, as we said, when we talked about that some time ago, when we wrote that curriculum, the first thing we did was sit down and go back through all the curricula that had been written in the 40 years before we sat down, because it's a terrible thing when we try to act like we've done something new, when in fact there's very little new in the world, particularly, in a situation like this. And we're going to talk about 1776 and the curriculum wars, because that's really what that was about. Everything in the media now, it's 1776, they canceled it, they took it off the website. It ain't off the website. If y'all want to get a copy, go to the College of the Ozarks website, because one of the guys on the commission is the president of the College of the Ozarks, and they put it over there for safekeeping. But at any rate, then they say, well, historians are coming in and the historians are saying that it's not historically accurate. Y'all looking at the wrong thing. Why y'all going for that red cape in this fight with this bull? You see, you're going for the wrong thing. It wasn't written for historians, fools. This is a renewal of an ideological declaration of independence and a declaration of war. And it's the same blueprint that has been used, as you said, Karen, in the public schools since the beginning of this enterprise, which, is entirely founded as a criminal enterprise when it comes to our people. So, if you're looking for historical accuracy, you've missed the entire point. They're not talking to you. And in fact, to quote another lighthearted movie, The Nutty Professor, remember when they standing at the buffet, and Sherman's mother and father are there, and the mother is talking, and the father looks at her and says, "You think I'll be listening to you? I don't be listening to you." So all you people up in arms about the 1776 project and think it's gone, they not listening to you. You think they be listening to you. They not listening to you. We'll get into that in a minute. But the Sea Islands that Jim Brown come from, there's a son, in fact, the first major superstar in baseball to come out of Henry Aaron's hometown, who precedes Henry Aaron, who Henry Aaron knew, who Henry Aaron for one brief moment in time shared a major league team with. And that's, of course, Leroy Satchel Paige. So as we, and I'm going to try to say the islands and we're going to keep going. As we think about Henry Aaron today, Henry Louis Aaron, the Hammer, I think we're probably going to approach this with a nod toward the thing folk will see everywhere else, so we can conserve our time here for the connections. Meaning, get I Had a Hammer, the Henry Aaron memoir, so to speak. Get the great Howard Bryant's book. The title of the book almost makes me well up because Karen, in a second, I'm going to ask you about your memories of Henry Aaron, because I have memories of Henry Aaron. I think we all do at a certain age, but I love Howard's title. And fortunately, last night, Roland Martin brought together Brother Bryant, Howard Bryant, Bob Kendrick, who is the director of the Negro Leagues Museum, 18th and Vine, as I call it, the shrine at 18th and Vine in Kansas City, and the great Claire Smith, a sister who, great journalist. And the four of us with Roland talked about the life of Henry Aaron. And I said, I'm honored to be in this quartet, but I promise you, I'm gonna make a few comments, but I'm sitting back and listening to y'all because y'all have a different generation. And I told him on the air right there, I say, man, the title of your book, that about sums it up. The name of Howard Bryant's Henry Aaron biography is The Last Hero. And I don't know that really overstates it in terms of the intersection of sports. I mean, Jim Brown is still here, as Dave Zirin wrote the memoir of Jim Brown. Jim Brown's got his own books, and then Dave Zirin came along and wrote a book a couple of years ago called Last Man Standing, and maybe the Jim Brown is there. And in fact, so what we're going to do today is talk about Henry Aaron, but we're going to talk, as John Henry Clark used to say, around the subject to frame and to get to the subject. In fact, we're going to mention this book. This is Dusty Baker's little memoir. I love Dusty Baker, Johnny B. Baker out of California, Kiss the Sky. He was a Jimi Hendrix fan who was Jegned, apprenticed by Henry Aaron when he was a young cat coming out of California, and they drafted him, and he was introduced to Henry Aaron because the Braves were trying to coax him not to go to college to sign him. And he writes about what that meant. In fact, Dusty Baker is one of the few people on the planet. Remember that curriculum I was talking about, that Philadelphia curriculum? We set up 6 questions that we say, if you're going to study Africana from an Africana lens, these 6 questions, you have to ask these 6 questions. The first question is, who are Africans to other people? That's just about everything in the school curriculum. I don't care if it's 1776 project or 1619 project. Who are we to other people? We have to ask that question first, because that's what we've all been socialized to look for. Now, and then that lets us also separate that question from the real question we want to ask, the thing we've been doing Saturday after Saturday, the work we all have to do. And that is the question of who African people are to each other. So when Johnny B. Baker, to white Major League Baseball, to many people who don't, they call him Dusty, right? To Henry Aaron, Dusty Baker say, and Howard Bryant writes this in The Last Hero, one of the few people who Henry Aaron would let call him Hank. Yeah. Don't worry, we close. We're gonna get there. Was Johnny B. Baker. Why? Because Dusty Baker tells the story in Kiss the Sky about how when he was going to think about signing with the Braves, he's a teenager now, 16 years old, 17 years old. He comes in to a workout with the Braves, and his mother, Dusty Baker's mother, says to Henry Aaron, "Take care of my son." Dusty Baker writes in this book. In fact, I ought to find the page if I can find it quick, because I love it when we can just tell the story the way it is. He says, here we go. He said, my mom and I flew down to Los Angeles, and that was the first time I had the privilege to meet Hank Aaron. He prefers Henry. We're getting there. We're getting there. Who are Africans to other people? Who are Africans to each other? He prefers Henry, but I always call him Hammer, as in Hammerin Hank, or sometimes just Ham for short. My mother wasn't a big baseball fan, but she knew who Hank Aaron was. Everybody knew who Willie Mays and Hank Aaron were. Willie Mays still walks the earth. We'll get to him too. The previous Wednesday back in Atlanta, Hammer hit his 30th home run of the season in a game against the Giants, meaning that for 10 of the previous 11 seasons, he had hit 30 or more homers. By the way, Henry Aaron, number 3 on the all-time hit list in Major League Baseball. If you take the 755 home runs that Henry Aaron hit in what was white Major League Baseball, become now what we call Major League Baseball, I'm sorry, add 5 more if you count his Negro League record, which they won't do. We'll get to that too. If you take all 755 they count out of the record, out of his hits, the man still got over 3,000 hits. This is Henry Aaron. All right, anyway. Meaning that for 10 of the previous 11 seasons, he'd hit 30 more homers. He had great wrists and a beautiful swing, and he was Mr. Consistency. My mama knew he was a great player, and she saw that he was also a good man, a sensitive and intelligent man, mentally strong. He reminded me somewhere between my dad and my uncles. So she asked Hank to look out for me. And he said he would. To this day, he has fulfilled his promise. Shout out and sympathy to all of the Aaron clan, his wife, Billy, his children, grandchildren, and shout out to all the people who he was a father and grandfather to, men like Dusty Baker, for example. We don't get to all that, but I said that at this moment because Dusty Baker, one of the few people close to him who would call him Hank. Henry Aaron's name is Henry. Sports writers, Henry Aaron's name is Henry. He wasn't gonna correct you, because understand that we walk through a world, we live in a world, again, all this is connected. We're making connections. We live in the world, Karen, that you just evoked. The world where we have a social structure face and we have a governance structure face. We have a face we show people. Hey, y'all doing that. Yes, good. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Very dignified. You know, Southerners are. Yeah, it's very nice. And then we got the face at home, Henry, or better yet, for all of us, Mr. Aaron. Like, can you imagine walking up to this brother, Hank? Yeah, you can if you Black in America, because that's how they talk. Hell, that's what they call your foremothers, my own mother working in houses. Oh, you won't call her by her first name. And I'm balling up my little 13-year-old fist saying, maybe I should just get rid of all the rest of your remaining baby teeth and the grown ones that came in. You don't call my mama by her first name. But anyway, yes, you do. Why? Because that's who she is to you. But that's not who she is to me. And so anyway, I set out to say I haven't left the island yet. Why? Because Henry Aaron is the best known player to baseball player, to come out of Mobile, Alabama. Oh, but he's not the first, probably maybe not even the greatest. The first and the greatest, probably Leroy Satchel Paige. Oh, wait a minute. No, wrong one. Leroy Satchel Paige. I got a couple of Satchel Paige pieces in here. This is one of the early, he wrote his own too. I guess I'll pitch forever, but I couldn't put my hands on that. I think that's probably in storage. Don't Look Back, Mark Rabowski. I had a working copy of that around here. Satchel Paige in the Shadows of Baseball. I bring it up because a reason I have Buck O'Neil here, and there's a whole great story about the nickname that Satchel Paige gave Buck O'Neil, but I'll resist talking about that. He called him Nancy. So it's a very interesting story behind that. But anyway, chapter 6 of Buck O'Neil's biography, Seems Like I've Been Here Before. There's a famous story that Buck O'Neil used to always tell. And in this chapter, he starts with everybody knows Satchel Paige, or everybody knows Satchel Paige, period. Or rather, everybody knows who he was, but few of us actually knew him. And I count myself one of the lucky ones. He said, let me start out with a story that shows part of who Satchel was that nobody ever hears about. One time we were on the road with the Monarchs, Kansas City Monarchs. And by the way, we're going to get into Henry Aaron's year in the Negro Leagues. One time we were on the road with the Monarchs in Charleston, South Carolina. Here we go. When we got to Charleston, the hotel rooms weren't ready yet. So he said, Nancy, You remember why he called me that, right? Nancy, come on with me. We're going to take a little trip. Well, we went on over to an area near the harbor called Drum Island. Jim Brown from a different island, but together they're known as the Sea Islands. That's what those Igbo people were, off the coast of South Carolina and Georgia. We're going to take a little trip. He says that was where they had auctioned off the slaves. And there was a big tree with a plaque on it. Hey, y'all, while I'm reading this, I want y'all to understand how the ancestors work. Karen didn't tell me what she was going to play and why she was going to play it. Don't play with the ancestors. They are always here. Let me continue. That was where they had auctioned off the slaves. And there was a big tree with a plaque on it, marking the site of the old slave market. Satchel and I stood there, silent as could be, for about 10 minutes, not saying anything, but thinking a whole bunch of things. Finally, Satchel broke the silence. You know what, Nancy? He said. What's that, Satchel? Seems like I've been here before. Me too, Satchel. That was Robert Leroy Page. A little bit deeper than most people thought. Satchel Paige was the first great baseball player to come out of Mobile, Alabama. He was not the last. Henry Louis Aaron, the Hammer, whose father played local Negro baseball in Mobile. They had a team called the Mobile Dodgers, who not only saw Satchel Paige up close, saw the white players when they would come through and play sometime Negro League. In fact, Henry Aaron's daddy said, I saw Babe Ruth hit a home run onto the railroad tracks. I was up in a tree in Mobile. Yeah, right. Interestingly enough, remember they created a candy bar for Babe Ruth called Baby Ruth. And they had another candy bar that had been created around the same time that when I was coming along and you were coming along, we thought they had named this one for the man that was getting ready to break Ruth's record, Henry Aaron. Remember O. Henry candy bar?
Yes.
Oh, Henry. They remember had that commercial.
Yes.
Them home runs. Oh, Henry. Some of y'all know about that O. Henry candy bar. But the point is that Henry Aaron's father played in the Negro Leagues. Local. He wasn't a Negro League player, but Satchel Paige was the first great one. And I thought about that because in 1971, they inducted Satchel Paige into the White Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. I mean, I don't call it the Baseball Hall of Fame. I mean, again, because you got to really think about that. You know, why are we calling it the Hall of Fame now? Oh, yes, integrated. You know, we're going to come together. But it's interesting. This was August the 9th. That's my brother's birthday. 1971. I guess my brother would have been 3 years old today that he got. Satchel Paige said this in his acceptance speech as he got his plaque at Cooperstown. Satchel Paige, who at age 62, at least as close as you could tell, because nobody really know what year he was born, and he wasn't going to really tell nobody as such. But at the age of 62, according to Henry Aaron, was the age that Satchel Paige was brought and signed by the Atlanta Braves to join their team as a kind of coach, player coach, but really a coach. So the Braves did this so that Paige could get the extra few months onto his time of service on a major league team to qualify for a major league pension, because by the time they brought him in his late 40s, the Cleveland Indians and stuff like that, you know, he pitched, he was actually very effective, but he was an old man then. But they released him a few months short of the time it would take for him to qualify for a major league pension. Shout out Jeff Bridges' character. The whole point is that, you know, we got the little juice from him. We let you in. Yeah, after I was gone. If you let me in when I was 22, you would be calling it the Satchel Paige Award. Or I'm sorry, the Leroy Page Award, not the Cy Young Award, because I was the greatest person to ever throw a ball in the United States of America in a game called baseball. But then they let him in the Hall of Fame, the first Negro Leaguer they let in based on the Negro League record. What did Satchel Paige say that day in his induction? Baseball has turned Satchel. This is what Satchel Paige said. Baseball has turned Satchel Paige from a second-class citizen to a second-class immortal.
Wow.
Who are we to other people? Who are we to each other? You know, niggas ain't allowed in the house. But we're going to let this nigga in the house. And the nigga came in the house and said, you've turned me from a second-class citizen to a second-class immortal. Don't you ever think that bringing me into your house washes you of your sins. Wash it. Don't ever think, Major League Baseball, they're going to incorporate the records of the Negro Leagues because they're going to show. No, you can't, because those records are incomplete. And watch this. They say they're going to cut off including any records after 1948, because Robinson comes in from the Kansas City Monarchs. He was a Negro Leaguer in 1947. Well, before that, then he's playing for the Kansas City Monarchs. He joins the Dodgers Major League roster in 47 after playing in Montreal the year before, comes in. So they're going to cut off the Major League roster, cut off the Negro League records after 48 because they can't vouch for the quality. Yeah, Henry Aaron played 1 year for the Indianapolis Clowns. Buck writes about that too, Mr. O'Neill, Buck O'Neill. Henry Aaron played for the Indianapolis Clowns, and of course, everybody had to have a nickname. So his nickname was Pork Chop, Henry Pork Chop Aaron, shortstop. And Buck O'Neill talks about talking to the coach of the coaches, and somebody asked him, "Hey man, who is this kid, Aaron?" He said, "You'll see." Aaron that day destroyed the pitching as usual. And afterwards, O'Neill says he goes to dinner with the other coach. And the coach said, "Well, damn, he was as good as you said, but thank God we won't be having to face him many more times." And O'Neill said, "What you talking about?" He said, "Oh, they're going to sign him." And shortly thereafter, the Milwaukee Braves come calling, and the Hammer joins white Major League Baseball. But I'm bringing all that up to say that you got Satchel Paige, Leroy Satchel Paige coming out of Mobile. You got the Hammer, Henry Aaron, coming out of Mobile, and his brother Tommy Aaron, coming out of Mobile. And I'm going to ask you in a minute now about this memory, Karen, so we can kind of begin to tie a lot of this stuff together. And then you got a cat who is not from Mobile. Actually, let me see. There's another brother who was born right outside of Mobile who idolized Henry Aaron, who's still alive. I actually pulled his autograph. That's Billy Williams. Billy Williams still around, played for the Cubs. He's a Hall of Famer as well. He came from a little town right outside of Whistler, Alabama, right outside of Mobile. But the other cat, well, there are a couple of others, really. Willie McCovey, who played with the brother I'm about to name. This brother wasn't from Mobile, but he was from Alabama, and he too played with the Negro Leagues. He played with the Birmingham Black Barons. His father was a baseball player. He still walks the earth. His name, of course, is Willie Howard Mays. And what did the Negro Leagues do with their dying gasp? Although they would limp along for another decade plus after Robinson, with their dying gasp, they spat forth the two Negroes that rewrote them white record books. Henry Louis Aaron out of Mobile, Willie Howard Mays out of Birmingham. Those are Negro Leaguers. And as Henry Aaron said his entire life, he said, the Negro Leagues, people would ask him, and Aaron very cool, there are people who say the Negro Leagues were better than the white major leagues. Well, that's true. Well, that's probably true. You know how black folk have to gauge how much somebody can take. You understand? That's why I like one of the interviews that Henry Aaron did with Craig Melvin. Craig Melvin asked him, your colleague in the media, mass media, of course, Craig Melvin, usually NBC, MSNBC. Craig Melvin, like most of us, be talking to Henry Aaron, just lit up like a Christmas tree. Craig Melvin say, man, there are people who say you're the greatest baseball player that ever played. He said, what would you say to that? Aaron leaned back. He said, well, I'm with you. And then I started laughing. I mean, and you feel the joy, the effervescence. But these are the Negro League players that did this kind of thing. But I want to pause here, Karen. I want to ask you, because you tweeted something and it just hit me in my heart. What's your memory of Henry Aaron?
Very little. I mean, I was 6, 7. My grandmother would come and I would spend summers down there, and then she would come up and stay with us sometimes during the wintertime. And little tiny woman named Julia, my heart. She had a little transistor radio, cream color. I never forget it. Had one little earbud, one of them little funny looking earbuds, that you just put in that one ear. And I would get into bed with her and we would share that little earbud, and she'd listen to Hank Aaron and tell me about him. And he's the first baseball player I ever knew because she loved him. The Atlanta Braves, being a Georgia woman. And that's the only person I ever knew was Hank Aaron until I got older, but he was baseball for me, and, I just think about the relationship that we have with the people that we love and what we get to engage with and what we get, and then ironically end up becoming a sports writer for the New York Daily News. But you think about, you know, those early memories, and it wasn't about the baseball, it was about the shared experience with my grandmother. But, you know, this, this little, I mean, I was saying to somebody, you know, I wish that more grandparents had, you know, that the gray hair and the fluffy skin and the, the warm bosoms, you know, because that kind of stuff is missing, and it ties us to things, and it's the wisdom of it. And it's, you know, like she was the smartest, greatest, most wonderful person I ever knew in my entire life, who loved me beyond. Like, I knew that I was loved. You know, you got parental love, but when you had a good grandparent, you know, it's nothing like it. So that was my foray into baseball through my grandmother's little tiny transistor radio. When did you first hear about Hank Aaron?
It's the same and different. It's exactly what you said. It is striking. Again, y'all, the ancestors don't make. It was radio, and you know, being down there in the South, it was radio. It wasn't television. At that time, NBC had something called a game of the week. So it was one game, two teams, but we listened on the radio. And as you also know, and those of you who had this experience, and there's so many, this is the thing I'm loving about Hammerin Aaron. He made transition, and all these people are telling stories that are the same story you just told. It's not even about Hammerin Aaron. It's about my grandmother. It's about my grandfather. My mother's play, as we used to, I'd say, play granddaddy, the man who lived across the street when we moved into the little duplex in Nashville, and I was too small to remember, but I would cut grass over there with him. We talked about baseball before. His man was Bob Gibson, as we talked about Gibson. And by the way, I was looking, because again, John Clark said you talk around the story to get to the story. This is the book that Bob Gibson wrote with Reggie Jackson, called 60 Feet 6 Inches, a Hall of Fame pitcher and a Hall of Fame hitter, talk about how the game is played. And in this book, it's very interesting. I'll never be able to find it right now. Oh wait, Towering Figures. Actually, I might actually be able to find it very quickly. I'll see if here we go. He said Bob Gibson, whose reputation, if y'all go back and look at the conversation that we had about Bob Gibson, you'll tell you about the history of Bob, because he just made transition a few months ago, right? Out of Omaha, Nebraska, hometown of Malcolm X and Bob Gibson. But at any rate, Bob Gibson tells Reggie Jackson, because you know Gibson's reputation was he ain't scared of no hitter. Bob Gibson tell Reggie Jackson, I have to say that I was never quite that enthused about seeing Hank Aaron. In fact, there was probably no pitcher and no player in the National League who enthused me less. That man did not miss a fastball. That's like the highest compliment a cat like Bob Gibson would give to any batter, because he thought I dominate. This man, I did not like this. This man did not miss a fastball, and Gibson's best pitch was his fastball. Some people say it's slider. This is what Reggie Jackson said out of Cheltenham, Pennsylvania. Well, you say Cheltenham, but you might as well say the Philly suburbs. Reggie Jackson say, in Oakland, I wore number 9. But when I came over to the Yankees, that number was already taken by Craig Nettles. So I chose 44 because of my admiration for Willie McCovey, Mobile, and Hank Aaron, Mobile. I was also aware that Jim Brown and Ernie Davis had worn 44 at Syracuse. Ancestors, come on now. Great number. Why does Jim Brown wear 44? You should have him on the show sometime and ask him, Karen. Let me stitch this back to Syracuse, because as you were talking about Jim Brown on that porch, Jim Brown, the first great running back out of Syracuse. Following him, Ernie Davis, the Express, who dies young. Then there is something known as the Syracuse 8. The Syracuse 8, of course, those of you who know this history know this. People may have just heard this. Go look up the Syracuse 8. Syracuse 8, 1968. That the Kings assassinated, by the Kennedys assassinated. These are 8 football players who say we got to change things around here. So they decide, y'all got us up here. Y'all want us to run. Y'all want us to be quiet. Jim Brown, the first great one. And remember, this white boy represented by Bridges is saying, quoting how many yards he ran, and Brown corrects him. Let's be very clear. One of the reasons why Jim Brown is considered the greatest running back to ever run in the NFL is when Art, whatever his name is, y'all had to look it up, Art Modell, who was the owner of Cleveland Browns, threatened him with, hey man, you out here shooting movies. That's a side job. You need to come on. Your job is here. Jim Brown quit. He only played 9 years in the National Football League. I'm not I'm not a slave. In fact, I love this. I remember reading this memoir. Jim Brown would come to the locker room in a suit and had a briefcase. Because, Jim Brown, I resist the urge. There's a whole book on Black Power in Cleveland. In fact, we mentioned it last week. We have to talk about that another time, how they pulled this thing together. The sports writers, white sports writers, Jim, why you come to the locker room like this when you play football? He said, this is my job. He says, I come to work dressed to do my job. I'll switch out this. And he said, why you come dressed like that? In other words, Jim Brown, like Roberto Clemente, who he would not let those Pittsburgh writers call him Bobby. My name is Roberto. Like, that's why I love, man, I should have wore, I wore that shirt before. My shirt with Willie Mays, Roberto Clemente, and Henry Aaron. And I asked the students, now find the black and find the Latino. And most of them don't know enough baseball to be able to pick anybody out. And of course, Roberto Clemente, who spoke very little English when he came, the white sports writers in Pittsburgh called him sullen. Called him, you're not being, you don't want to talk to us. Hey, my name is Roberto. Y'all not calling me Bobby. Jim Brown, that kind of dignity. We're going to talk about dignity in a minute too. But this comes with a type of, you're not going to make me into what you want me to be. But Brown made it through Syracuse, playing lacrosse, playing football, All-American. Ernie Davis comes after him. And then the Syracuse 8, because Syracuse loves Negroes as long as they run the ball. They're like every other white plantation college. Alabama sent a damn illiterate football coach to the United States Senate because he had been a coach at Auburn University. We love you Negroes, but the Syracuse 8 said we had to stand up to this. And they came up with a list of demands. We want at least a black assistant coach. We want you want you to take care of everybody on the team, better health care, better training care. Somebody get injured, you don't treat them. They had a whole list. And there were white players who were with them, but they eventually get put off the football team. Here come the alumni talking about, oh, hell no, they got to go. Here come some of their teammates, white teammates said, we don't want to play. If they come back, because they said, we're going to boycott if we don't get this. Ultimately, now, of course, a million years later, they bring on Syracuse back, play 8 back. They honor them. They talk. Yeah, that's what white institutions always do. They punch you dead in your face. And like Satchel Paige said, yeah, I went from second class citizen to second class eternal, second class immortal, second class honoree. You ain't doing us no favors. Making us put notes in your history. So at any rate, I mentioned that because, as I said, when you see some players with the numbers they wear, those players are paying homage to the governance structure, who we are to each other. I remember in Philadelphia, for example, when Allen Iverson would come after the games to press conferences, and he would have on jerseys, throwback jerseys, in tribute to the people he honored, like a Bill Russell jersey or something, and the Philadelphia sports writers and white fans would go crazy. The hell's wrong with him? He plays for the Sixers. Yeah, no. See, AI's problem, your problem with AI is he gonna get his hair braided over there on he gonna get his hair done up there on Germantown Avenue in the black community, North Philly. He gonna have his folks with him. He gonna sag. He gonna have tattoos, and he gonna come to the press conference honoring Jim Brown. He may have a football jersey on. And y'all think that these cats is just doing this for fashion. Some of them now really are. But if you go back to the earlier days, this was all about respect. And y'all think that he repping Philly and you rep Philly, so therefore he should rep it the way you rep it. Now he repping being black. Please understand that you can't even see what he's doing because those are two separate categories. Who Africans are to other people, who Africans are to each other. So Henry Aaron, a man who would inspire Reginald Martinez Jackson out of Cheltenham, Pennsylvania, to put on that 44 when he comes to the Yankees. A man who would get the respect of his fellow Hall of Famer, white Hall of Famer, Major League Baseball Hall of Famer, Bob Gibson, and everybody else. A man who, because of your grandmother, was the only man you knew with baseball. But really, more importantly, is you laying up there next to your grandmother in the bed with that. And I remember that little white cord with the little earbud, the thing that stick, and it's like you put it there, and oh my God. And for y'all to be sharing that, that is the memory that puts us together. And for me, after cutting grass in Mr. James' yard, we sitting on the porch. He is a Cardinals fan because of Bob Gibson. We could also in Nashville, because remember, the Atlanta Braves are the first major league franchise in the deep South. You know, he said, well, Baltimore Orioles is south of the Mason-Dixon line, but you know, that's South. It is, but it ain't South. Atlanta Braves In fact, Henry Aaron hit a home run in the first All-Star game played in Atlanta for the Atlanta Braves. He was representing the Atlanta Braves on the All-Star team. He hit a home run as the first All-Star game played in the South. Aaron in Nashville, we knew because we could get the Atlanta station at night. Yeah, I know, because you and your grandmama listening to that little transistor, listen to AM station. FM is like, we remember when FM, whoa, what is that? It's all clear. No, you had to wait at nighttime to get a station. And in Nashville, we could hear Atlanta and we could hear Cincinnati. Cincinnati has 700, WLW, I think is name. It's a clear channel station. Nashville is well known because of its clear channel station. It's called WSM. We serve millions. We talked about D. Ford Bailey and the Grand Ole Opry. That's why everybody knew about the Grand Ole Opry out of Nashville, because they had what they call a clear channel station. You know this better than I do, Karen. You could explain it much better. That frequency, in other words, isn't cobbled with other stations, other places. You can hear that all over. And Atlanta had a broadcast station that broadcast the Braves game. So as a child, I grew up with Henry Aaron, Ralph Carr, who's a graduate of, graduate of Grambling State University, friends with Dusty Baker, grew up with Baker and them, but differently. Because by then, the Braves gotten rid of Baker. He was playing for the LA Dodgers. And the reason we knew Dusty Baker, who we did not like at that time, was because Baker would come and the Dodgers were playing, this is like the mid to late 70s into the early 80s. They were playing the Cincinnati Reds. Our team was the Cincinnati Reds because we could hear them on the radio. And more importantly for us, Cincinnati Reds had Joe Morgan, Dan Dreesen, George Foster, Mario Soto, Dave Concepcion, Cesar Geronimo, Ken Griffey, Sr. They had all the black players. You know what I'm saying? So Dusty Baker and them come to town. We like Dusty Baker as an individual, but we didn't want the Dodgers to win. Little did we know that Johnny B. Dusty Baker coming to play the Reds and versus the Reds versus the Dodgers, those great wars in 1976, 77, 78, and Tom Lasorda just made transition in his 90s, the former coach of the Dodgers. We didn't know that Baker had been raised in baseball by the man we worshipped in Atlanta, the Hammer, Henry Aaron. And so as your memories are with your grandmother in the bed, sharing that one little earbud transistor, and there's a bunch of people in here right now, I know exactly that radio you talking about because we had the same thing. My memory is me and Mr. James sitting on that porch. And also, and I'll say this and keep going because there's a lot of Henry Aaron. We'll co-mingle as we're having these conversations. 1974. Remember, Henry Aaron nears the home run record of Babe Ruth, George Herman Ruth from Baltimore. He nears that record at the end of 1973. He's getting hate mail all over the place. By most accounts, over 900,000 pieces. Somewhere between 930, 940,000 pieces, according to most historians, but you never know for sure. Aaron's daughter, Gail, was a student at Fisk University, down the street from me. Up Jefferson Street in North Nashville, from across the street from Meharry Medical College, and up the street from Tennessee State, where I went to undergrad. But that was not when I started undergraduate school in Tennessee State. No, this was 1973. And I was all of 8 years old. So I didn't know that while we were cheering for Henry Aaron, say, break that record, and don't let nobody fool none of y'all who are not old enough to remember this, it was absolutely racial. Oh, it was racial. Break the back of Babe Ruth. Break his whole back. By the way, parenthetically, Babe Ruth was not a kind of bloodless color. All human beings have color, but some people look like a little bit like they don't have a lot of color, right? He wasn't a vanilla white. He was more toward a kind of beige, reddish brown white. As a result, the racists in Major League Baseball, and I'm talking about the Georgia Peach, Ty Cobb, all them cats, when the Yankees would play like the Detroit Tigers, they would call Babe Ruth the N-word. They swore, in other words, they would say, you a nigga, you black. Nobody, in other words, that was the insult they used on Babe Ruth when he was playing Major League Baseball. We didn't know that as kids. All we know is Babe Ruth is your hero. Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle, all you white people. And here comes Henry Aaron. In fact, that was the banner they had. Move over, Babe. Here comes Henry. And they had that picture of Babe Ruth. And then you had the hammer after you hit another home run in the front of it in color. It's like, move over, babe. Here comes Henry, the end of 1973 season. I'm 8 years old. Henry Aaron hits number 714, 713. We realize that, and then 714, Gail, who I did not know, don't know, she's a teenager at Fisk, who Henry Aaron raised money for, scholarships for, he and his wife, Billy. Let's be very clear. That's a whole nother story. We can get into that. She's getting death threats. Then a rumor starts that she's going to be kidnapped. They're going to kidnap Gail, hold her hostage and kill her, because Henry Aaron is not allowed to break this nigga's record. Wow. Really? Imagine, and Henry Aaron writes about this. He talks about this. Y'all can go, y'all ain't got to read a book. Go look at all the interviews that are out there on here. Henry Aaron would say, you know, I had no joy. I had no joy about, you know, this home run record. I was under such stress. He had a bodyguard. He was living in Atlanta. Maynard Jackson, the mayor of Atlanta, provided him with extra security. He had a body man, a black dude, who stayed with him the whole time. So he's getting close to the record, but he doesn't break the record until the following April, spring, end of the season. Now we're in 1974. Al Downing, I think it was, the Dodgers. Y'all, some of y'all really know this off the top of your head. Again, he ties the record. He's tied the record. Then he breaks the record. My God, his mother and father were there at the game in Atlanta. Y'all can look this up. You can read it anywhere. If you really want to have fun, go get those. Some of y'all got them in your house. Some of you can get them on Google Books, wherever. And I got copies of just about all the Ebony magazines. I mean, and Henry Aaron was on the cover of Ebony and Jet. My God, so many times. A lot of us, you knew Henry Aaron because you see him, right? Henry Aaron tells a story of how his mother and father, if y'all ever watched it, and if you've seen it a million times, remember he hits the home run, he's circling the bases, the two white boys show up out of nowhere, ain't no damn security to pat him on the back. He rounds third, he gets the home plate. The first person, his teammates are out there saying, the first person to jump up in his arms is his mother. Henry Aaron's mother, Estella. You see her just get up on his show. Henry Aaron had received all kind of letters and death threats and was told, nigga, if you break that record, you will never cross home plate. We're going to shoot you before you cross home plate. So they had swept for snipers, guns, and Henry Aaron's mother jumped up in his arms because she said, if they kill you in this moment, I want to die too. Because I couldn't live. Y'all don't know black people, whether it be Bo Bridges in a movie, or any of the rest of y'all. You don't know nothing about us except what we want you to know. And so whether it be a 1776 project that's trying to keep something pure that we never wanted anything to do with, or 1619 project, which is arguing us too. You don't know us. You don't know us. If you want to know us, you understand when a mother says, I'm going to jump in your arms because I got to hook. Because if this thing comes through your body, it's got to come through mine too. I can't imagine being here. That's Henry Aaron. So we're going to hear about 3,771 hits. We're going to hear about his total bases, 2,297, placing him first on the all-time list. There's nobody even close. We're going to hear about 6,856 total bases. Total base is every time you get a hit, you get a single, you get one hit, one base. You get a double, you get two. You get a triple, you get three. You get a home run, you get four. Henry Aaron retired with 6,856 total bases. Next in line is Stan Musial. And Stan Musial is so far behind that ain't nobody ever gonna capture that record. Henry Aaron also won a couple of Gold Gloves. Henry Aaron, according to most people play with him, was a fourth or fifth fastest player in Major League Baseball, but he didn't steal a lot of bases because they ain't need him to steal a base. Henry Aaron could be, like Craig Melvin says, some people say, you the greatest baseball player that ever lived. Henry Aaron said, I'm with you. And then Henry Aaron retired and became a hugely successful businessman. He and his wife, Billy, became huge philanthropists. When I say huge philanthropists, I got a very good friend of mine, young brother who was in my class when I first started teaching at Temple when I was a graduate student, who is now going on. He helped direct the Mary Lou Williams Center. And Mary Lou Williams, somebody else we'll have to talk about another time, the great musician at a Pittsburgh Center down in North Carolina, at Duke, UNC. But anyway, my man, Nate Thompson, I was asking Nate because, people calling, texting, because we share. These are our heroes. We talked about this before when we talked about Bob Gibson and them, or Prince, even musicians past, athletes past. We know them, but we know them as markers for our mortality, our moments in time and space. Your grandmother, my grandfather. I mean, the relationships we have. But Nate, and I was asleep. Nate and them called apparently last night. They said, yeah, we paying homage to Henry Aaron. We thought about you. So I asked Nate, I texted him earlier. I said, man, what's your greatest memory of Henry Aaron? Nate Thompson, young brother, not young. I mean, I'm 55. Nate's in his, I guess, early 40s now. He had a chance to meet Henry Aaron when he was down in North Carolina because Henry Aaron and his wife, Billy Suber Aaron, they founded the Young Scholars Summer Program research. Well, they funded this Young Scholars Research Institute that's at the Samuel Du Bois Cook Center on Social Equity at Duke. Now, guess who's affiliated with that? Somebody you've interviewed, Sandy Darity, which is why Sandy Darity tweeted out gratitude to Henry Aaron yesterday because the Aarons funded scholarship programs. The Aarons dumped millions. Morehouse School of Medicine, all these places. But the thing that Nate remembers was that the Aarons came and he was able to spend the evening with them. And what he heard mouth to ear was Henry Aaron talking about how much Samuel Du Bois Cook had meant to him. Samuel Du Bois Cook, by the way, was called Du Bois, was named Du Bois after W.E.B. Du Bois, one of the great college presidents. My dear friend and brother, Walter Kimbrough at Dillard University, follows in the steps of Samuel Du Bois Cook, who was out there. I mean, he's one of the great HBCU presidents. They don't make HBCU presidents like that anymore, quite frankly. And those who know about those presidents who were apprenticed by those presidents, like a Walter Kimbrough, are trying to walk in those steps, but they don't make cats like that anymore. The Mary Bethunes, the Samuel Du Bois Cooks, the Benjamin Mazes, who I'm going to return to in about 30 seconds. But Henry Aaron was always talking about non-athletes, non-celebrities, about educators and institution builders that had inspired him. So after he came out of sports, after he retired, he used his acumen, his abilities, he used his intellect, he used his passion to create hugely successful businesses. And out of those revenues, he hired black folk, he donated, he was a great philanthropist, he and his wife. And when he came to the Du Bois Cook Center at Duke, he talked about what Samuel Du Bois Cook had meant to him and what we could do as a people, as black people, to change the world in the ways that Samuel Du Bois Cook talked about it. A great educator. He said, Dr. Du Bois Cook was very important in helping me frame the way I saw the world. And then after the program was over, Nate said, he was kind of like his body man. So you need anything, this kind of thing. And then at the very end, Nate said, he said to Mr. Aaron, he said, brother, thank you. You've always meant a lot to me. And I want to thank you for doing so much for our people. You know what? This brother, Nate Thompson, brilliant educator in his own right. You know what he said, Hank Aaron said to him, Henry Aaron? Mr. Aaron looked at him and said, I wish I had done a lot more. The day Henry Aaron was initiated into the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, his family was there, his wife and children, a lot of his teammates, there. Go look it up on YouTube. Henry Aaron, and I'm so glad Roland played it last night. Henry Aaron asks to stand up and be acknowledged. Some people he had invited to the Cooperstown Baseball Hall of Fame complex to be there with him that day. Marvin Arrington, the mayor of Birmingham, that first wave of black mayors. Maynard Jackson, the mayor of Atlanta. And the dean of HBCU presidents, then and now, the great Benjamin Elijah Mays. This is Dr. Benjamin Mays, Morehouse. And you see Dr. Mays then in advanced years with his little straw hat on from 96, South Carolina, not too far from Mary McLeod Bethune-Cookman, 96, because it was 96 miles from this county seat. No, it didn't have a name. Benny Mays, get his book Born to Rebel. Benjamin Elijah Mays sitting at Cooperstown with his straw hat off, waving at the crowd. Because Henry Aaron. So y'all see a ball player. I am a race man. And when and where I'm here, at to quote Anna Julia Cooper, the race enters with me. So anyway, I'm going to pause there because we're going to talk some more. We can talk more about it, about his relationship with Jackie Robinson, what Jack Roosevelt Robinson meant to him, all this kind of thing. So,
and I also wanted to mention the $3 million that he and his wife gave to Morehouse Medical Center back in, I think, 2015. He went back there couple of weeks ago with Andy Young to get the vaccine. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, that's why he's dead or what have you. But Andrew Young was there. He's a year older. He got that same vaccine from Moderna at that same place. And, you know, while I may have mixed feelings about the vaccine, I don't want that to be turned into a reason why Hank Aaron isn't here today.
Well, I'll be honest with you, Karen, because we all saw that, right? And it's an unspoken thing. So I reached out to a few of my very good friends who are medical doctors, and they all said the same thing. We can't say that had any impact on what happened to Henry Aaron, and we can't say that it didn't. Everybody's different, and I'm watching these reports. Oh, it had nothing to do. Oh, you're a doctor now. so yes, everybody be careful, okay? Because we need this vaccine to get back to the new normal we're going to build in this world. But I tell you, boy, this one hits hard, Karen. I know it hit you hard. Look, hey, y'all, we supposed to talk about the 1776. When Henry Aaron transitioned, all I got was a text from Karen with 2 words, Henry Aaron. I know we got to talk about. This is hitting us all.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about inflection points. And, you know, I started off and I didn't tell you that I was going to play this clip, but it's been sitting in my spirit since I watched it last week. And, you know, the athletes are a point through which they're able to accept us. You know, we're heading into a Super Bowl. They love us as long as we are throwing a ball or singing and dancing and shucking and jiving. They love us. But, you know, we don't let niggas in the house.
How about
I just, you know, and I think about somebody as great as Hank Aaron, who we know through baseball. But as you mentioned, he played so many other sports, Jim Brown, lacrosse. You talked about Allen Iverson. His best sport was football. Charlie Ward.
He wanted to play football. Isn't that crazy? Karen, that's crazy. This boy not even 6 feet tall. He's not 170 pounds dripping wet, but he was an all-state quarterback down there in Virginia.
That's right. That's right. I mean, Charlie Ward won a Heisman Trophy. They wouldn't let him in the league. He had to play basketball for the Knicks. You know, like we're so multifaceted, but they only see us through one lens, as you said. You know, and I feel every bit of your passion and emotion. You know, y'all don't know us.
You don't know.
We're constantly having to squeeze through your tiny lens and your tiny way in which you see. Hank Aaron to have a broad view to make sure that people are taken care of. Stuff we will never probably know that he did for us.
Oh, there's no question about that.
The blueprint for how we survive this, I think you're laying it. And I just want to say thank you again, because in many ways, you know, these classes, and I can't say it enough, and I'll keep saying it as long as I have breath in my body, have allowed me to unlock certain things. I know that this process is making a whole lot of people uncomfortable.
Oh, you think?
Yeah.
We ain't doing nothing but. So you know what? It's so funny you say that, Karen, because, you know, there's people we think about slavery. People say, why are you always talking about slavery? That's what that 1776 project in part is about. They don't want to talk about slavery, but they don't want to talk about it for a different reason than we talking about it, because they only see us as the descendants of slaves, which means we slaves too. Like you say, slaves run ball, but we're asking the question, who are we to each other? You know, something that really struck me last night is thinking, Henry Aaron's born in 1934. Mobile. There was a brother named Casula. He came to the United States during enslavement, and they gave him the name Cujo Lewis. We know the name because as a teenager, Casula, his wife, well, they weren't married when this happened, but they eventually get together. They are brought on the last recorded ship that is taken from Africa to what is by then the United States. That ship is called the Clotilda. Our friend Natalie Robertson, who is professor at Hampton University, has written a book called The Slave Ship Clotilda that documents this. In fact, Natalie, Professor Robertson, spent a lot of time in West Africa, going a backward trace to where these people came from, this kind of thing. It's a brilliant book, The Slave Ship Clotilda. Sylvia Ann Juffe from the Schomburg wrote a book called Dreams of Africa in Alabama. The cover of the book is the famous picture with Casula Lewis sitting there as an elder and his two little like great-great-granddaughters. And you know, by then, Black people still adopted Christianity. The little girl's named Martha and Mary. But most people now in 2021 may be familiar with the story of Casula Lewis and his family and the Africans who were kidnapped from the recovered and published manuscript that of the testimony of Casula Lewis given to a young sister from Eatonville, Florida, who had come out of Howard University and then going to Columbia, and who was sent to Alabama to take the testimony of Casula Lewis with a little bit of money that was cobbled together from a couple of people at Columbia, and the rest of the money came from the great Carter Godwin Woodson and the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, now African American Life and History. That would be, of course, Eatonville's own Zora Neale Hurston, who then published a partial transcript of that conversation in the Journal of Negro History. But now we know the book because the book has been published. It's called Barracoon. In fact, the sister who edited the notes and published it, she came and we picked that book for freshmen to read at Howard in College of Arts and Sciences a couple of years ago. Dr. Dana Lewis and myself, who up until now have managed the Howard University College of Arts and Sciences freshman seminar, because it's like 1,400 students. So we had them all read the book. And then, you know, she came in because the manuscript for the book had been in the archives at Howard University. It's in the archives. They're the original notes, Zora Hurston's piece. But I said all that to say that Henry Aaron was born in 1934. Casula Cujo Lewis made transition in 1935 for a year. A man who had been stolen over here in an illegal run. Because remember now, in the federal constitution, the one that they talk about in the 1776 BS, which is, I love the document. I really do. I think it's an important document because there's so much in that document that looks exactly like what we teach in the schools. And like, get rid of that 1770. You can't get rid of it. It's all in your children's minds. You better read that damn document in a minute. We'll talk about it for a minute. But at any rate, they like to say in there, well, you know, the slave trade was abolished in the United States in 1808. What they don't say is they kept it going for another 50 years. And the last boat they had a record of is the Clotilda, which came into the bay in Mobile, Alabama. Mobile. A little place called Africa Town. My dear friend Michael Blakey, who's at the College of William and Mary, used to be at Howard University, was one of the key people in the New York African burial ground work. I was on a call with Mike yesterday, and he was talking about the descendants of the folks at Africa Town, which is in Mobile, who are fighting now to preserve the memory of Mobile, to remember in Africa Town the history. They've kept it alive all these years, but Africa Town is in a part of Mobile that they've used for everything from a waste dump. There's environmental racism to go on. I mean, all this stuff going on. There's a church where Casula is buried, where his wife, his family is buried. He became a sexton in the church. He used to sweep up the church. They took care of him, you know, when he got too old, this kind of thing. So the history is there, but they got to fight. Mike was telling us, you know, they got to fight in Africaville, in Mobile to keep that going. But for 1 year, Henry Aaron and Casula Lewis were on this side of on top of the earth together. Satchel Paige, Leroy Page's father was enslaved. This is not ancient history. Y'all don't know us. And it's not because we have tried to tell you who we are. Make no mistake about it, which is why when you said some people are mad, I'm like, I understand why. Because what y'all need to understand is part of the reason y'all don't know us is because we don't want you to. We don't want you to. And so the sports writers now are going to write about Henry Aaron is the legitimate home run king in Major League Baseball. Barry Bonds is not the home run king because Barry Bonds was on steroids. Let's be very clear. You know why Barry Bonds wore number 25? Because his godfather, his father's best friend on the Giants, Barry Bonds' daddy named Bobby Bonds, and you know this better than I do, Karen, because you were a former sports writer. Bobby Bonds, if he hadn't been injured off and on, would probably rewrote the record books as well. His friend on the Giants, Willie Howard Mays. Willie Mays wore number 24. That number retired. Barry Bonds left the Pittsburgh Pirates where he had 24. So I'm gonna come over here and wear 25 because my godfather was 24. That's retired, but I'm gonna put the 5 on it and I'm gonna rewrite the record book. By the way, that's why Ken Griffey Jr. wore 24. Understand, when y'all see a 21 on the back of some of these kids, that these Africans who speak Spanish that y'all call Latinos, that's because of Roberto Clemente wore number 21. Don't ever get it twisted and don't think that some of these young cats don't understand the genealogy they come out of. Baseball is all about memory. I mean, baseball out of all the sports is probably the one. And these black players, you know, and that's not to diss the young players too, because what you see now with a LeBron James, what you see with all those sisters on the Atlanta Dream in the WNBA, what you see is there is a remembering that's starting to take place. And Henry Aaron was a constant presence in Atlanta. Y'all ask anybody, Henry and Billy Aaron, about what they did and how they kept that connection going. Chad Boseman goes to visit Henry Aaron when he's filming 42, the Jack Robinson part of which was filmed in Georgia. I mean, there's all that going on. But I started to say that when they said, oh yeah, they're going to be stories now. Oh well, Henry Aaron, you know, he was ambivalent about Barry Bonds because of the steroid. That's who we are to other people. You don't know the relationship. We do know this though. The summer that Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa were battling back and forth to break the home run record, Henry Aaron gave some remarks in an interview. What do you think? So I'm rooting for Sosa. The governance structure, who we are to other people, asked the question. But Sosa's from the Dominican Republic. I mean, Aaron say black. Oh, internationalism. The same reason that black people in America be rooting for black people in the Olympics from other countries, while all the rest of y'all talking about USA. We be like, let's count the number of blacks on the teams. We going with this team over this other team. We always root for the Jamaicans. See, y'all don't know us. Give a damn about your flag. We're going to tell you we do because it's going to keep you out of our business. But trust, if it's Jamaica versus the U.S. and it ain't all black on black, we're going with Jamaica. Anyway, I shouldn't even.
No. Do you remember Teofilo Stevens?
Oh, my God. The boxer out of Cuba?
Yes.
Tell folks don't know. Please, Karen. Tell me about the story of Teofilo Stevens.
The Olympics. I just remember rooting for him because I was made to believe that Cuba was, our enemy.
Yeah.
And then I see this black man with hair like my daddy's, skin like my dad, and I'm like, I remember Teofilo Stevenson, and I think he fought for a long time for Cuba, like well past the age that he should have been fighting. And I remember rooting for him.
Yes.
Every single big, strapling, almost Muhammad Ali-esque in his physique.
Very much so.
Stevenson, Teofilo Stevenson. As you're saying that, it is so true. Just naturally, like no one had to tell me.
Nope.
That I should be rooting for this man in the Olympics.
That's right.
Who had a Cuban name on his back.
How about that?
Not America. That
is so funny you said that. Karen, I had almost forgotten about that. Oh, you just brought a flood up because we were kids. We didn't know. We just watched the TV. But you're going to pick the black dude. We don't even care what's on your chest. Oh, man. And it was poetry. It was like Ali.
He was amazing.
Oh, yeah. Teofilo Stevenson. My God. Yes. It's funny, Karen, you say that because, and again, Henry Aaron does this for us, for you, for me, for people of a certain age. We're not advanced elders. They got other kind of stories. See, my mother's generation, my mother's 92, and she's from Alabama, Central Alabama. For them, they remember when those players weren't just athletes. They were, in fact, I love this. Major League Baseball did this. It was around I guess maybe it meant for the 50th anniversary of Robinson's integrating white Major League Baseball, at least openly integrating white Major League Baseball. Because those of you who know, a lot of us know, of course, that if you spoke Spanish and were just light enough, they would let you in. They call you a Cuban or something like that. In other words, it was black people playing white Major League Baseball before. And if you go to the 19th century, you go back to like the book called The Divided Heart of Moses Fleetwood Walker. Fleetwood Walker, now you're talking about post-Civil War era, is a whole history of black. Not that we care, because it's all about Andrew Rube Foster, 18th and Vine in Kansas City in 1920, the formation of the Negro Leagues, or bringing together of the existing teams and then creating some more stuff. But so my mother and them generation, those in their 80s and 90s, they remember when you couldn't just be a ball player. Some of the criticism of Willie Mays, for example, fairly or unfairly, was he didn't want to get involved in politics. Aaron was always a race man. And in fact, like I said, the 50th anniversary of Major League Baseball letting Jackie Robinson in so that Branch Rickey could make all the money and eventually the rest of them too. You know, act like this was all altruistic. No, these cats is counting bottom down. In fact, Branch Rickey was an enemy of the Negro Leagues. We talked about that when we talked about Effa Manley, but in some ways he was. But in that 50th anniversary, they did a video and they talking about Robinson. And so I love this video because forget the Major League Baseball propaganda. That's the social structure. We know you want to give yourself. You're not honoring Jackie Robinson. You honoring yourself. Anytime you see them honoring, but Satchel Paige was clear about it. Now I'm a second-class immortal. In other words, you're bringing me in here now to wash yourself. You're bringing me in here now for the same reason you put Carol Swain as the co-chair of the 1776 commission that Trump did. She a black woman. She for years was on faculty at Vanderbilt, my hometown in Nashville. But the reason you put her there because she black. You just because you want to show how great you are. We know how y'all play this game. But in the little segment they did, like 3-4 minute segment, they start with Jack Robinson. They have Rachel Robinson talk about her husband. And then you see the generation that Robinson influenced. In fact, Howard Bryant said this last night, and it's in his book. You get The Last Hero. Again, I don't want to engage in hyperbole, but part of remembering is how you narrate, how you tell the story. And so in this moment right now, January 23rd, 2021, Henry Aaron's the last hero. The last hero. I'm saying Willie Mays is still alive, Billy Williams is still alive, but Henry Aaron, I can't think. Jim Brown's still around, Bill Russell's still around. Hope they stay around another 50, 100 years. But Henry Aaron, So in that piece, then you see the generation that Robinson influenced. And as Howard Bryant writes in The Last Hero, as Henry Aaron said in numbers of interviews, when I saw Robinson, he said, that's my way. He said, because baseball for me, that was my way forward. Father, mother scrapping by in Mobile, doing what they doing, keeping the family together, making a roof over their head. Henry Aaron out there on the railroad tracks, picking up bottle caps, hitting them with sticks, perfecting the style. Remind me of Isaiah Thomas talking about, you knew I was going to be a good shooter. Why? Because in Chicago, we had a bike wheel we had knocked all the spokes out of that we shooting. If I can do that in the middle of the night, and in Chicago, I can damn sure drain a jumper for Indiana University in the business. Come on now. So at any rate, Aaron talking about the meaning of Robinson. Howard Bryant says in The Last Hero, he said, I took a risk as a sports writer, as a writer of a biography on one person. I devoted a whole chapter to Robinson, named about Jackie Robinson, in a book about Hank Aaron, because Henry Aaron was talking about what Robinson means. He said, I saw Robinson. I said, that's my path out. Robinson coming out of Kansas City Monarchs before he goes to the Dodgers. Aaron coming out of the Indianapolis Clowns before he joins the Milwaukee Brewers. Mays coming out of the Birmingham Black Barons before he goes to the New York Giants. But you see in the little clip, after they do Robinson and Rachel comes on, then you see the generation influenced by Robinson, Henry Aaron, Maury Wills, Ernie Banks. Some of these cats' ancestors now. Maury Wills from DC, right? But Henry Aaron says this. He said, Jackie Robinson taught us that you had a duty. You had a duty to represent beyond the field. So when you took the field, you had to have a certain dignity. You could hear Henry Aaron, he talking about baseball. This is going to be the first black person some people see. But it ain't even about you. You're going to respect me. But this is about those little black kids. See that little girl over there peeking around the corner, looking at me? I can't come out in public and be anything other than something her brother, and the whole family respect. Because they didn't just come here to see me play baseball. They came here to see themselves win. They cheering for me the same reason that, Karen, you and I cheer for Tiffello Stevenson. They cheering for me. And so my mother's generation and them, they looking at them like, and these cats by definition represent the race. When Robinson would come to Philadelphia, you had some of the old heads in Philly, Nate and them homies, you know, my adopted homies after living almost 20 years in Philly. Them old heads would tell you when Jack Robinson and them would come and the Dodgers would come and play the Phillies, black people in Philly would come and sit on the first base side and cheer for Robinson. And when he get on base, steal. And the Philadelphians is like, you ain't cheering for the Phillies? Nah, F the Phillies, y'all racist. We cheer for Jackie Robinson. The Dodgers, yeah, whatever. We cheering for Robinson. Get it through your Ted Double Duty Ratcliffe, all them pictures from the Negro Leagues, another Mobile cat who, you know, never got a chance. And so when our generation, Karen, you and I come along and our people now we talking about folks now in their 50s, their 40s, a few folks in their 40s. I mean, I remember this well. Here he is on the back end of his career. And you're right, Tiffello Stevenson fought forever. No question, because part of it was Cuban propaganda too. The Cubans are like propping him up, like, see, this is a black man, he's Cuban, and the Cubans, of course, you know, we could talk about that another time. The political history. I mean, they helped liberate South Africa when they go over there and fight in Angola versus the forces, the frontline forces, South African military. But when our generation comes along, we have the double blast. We got the blast from our parents, our grandparents, the old people in our communities, our churches, our community centers, our barbershops, beauty parlors, who venerate these people, who teach it. And then we get that last glimpse of them as the new generation comes in who have been influenced by them. And, you know, it's interesting. My very, very dear brother, close associate, and master teacher, Larry Crow. And I told you this, Karen, Larry Crow, who works with the history makers, one of the greatest historians we have in any form. Larry reminded me after watching one night in Miami, and he said, you know, Crow killed me with this. I was like, Crow, I should have caught it, because when we were talking about it, he actually texted me after, and he said, you know, ABKCO, which Abco is a co-producer of that One Night in Miami. And folks who don't know who Abco is, y'all need to look them up, because the owner of Abco was Alan Klein. His family still runs it. So if you got the impression in One Night in Miami that discussion Sam Cooke was part of in terms of what I own and what I get is why I'm in this, because that's how you get black power. Part of that money's coming to me. That money's coming. They don't even know yeah. Alan Klein owned, the Klein family, Abco, owns all of Sam Cooke's stuff. And if you see that documentary on how he died and what he died, don't ever get it twisted. So what you watched in One Night in Miami, that's good in theory, but in practice, Sam Cooke was robbed.
Well, can we talk about that for, because it is, please. Right? You know, I think many of us go, you know, we're absolutism, absolutists, you know, like if there's something impure, I'm not messing with it, right?
We can't do that. We can't live.
So can you know, as we suss through the 1776 project, 1619, you know, like it's almost as if people are looking for that one thing that's wrong to discount the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I keep saying we need to chew up the meat, take the nourishment, spit out the bones.
Yes.
Take what's good and build from there. But we can't do this, you know, and at the same time, I think we need to be zero tolerant as it relates to people who in our community who mean us no good. It's exhausting. It's so much juggling. We got to figure out what's right, what's not, and at the same time hold people accountable to do the right thing, to be the last hero, to be dignified, to in a way that, as I've said before, that these young people deserve us to be their elders. We need to embody all of that at the exact same time as we take in this information and figure out what's right. Because I knew that And at the same time, as I'm watching that discourse with Sam Cooke, I'm like eyebrow up. I watched the documentary, the two killings of Sam Cooke. Is it? I think that's what it's called.
Yes.
And I know that he didn't die the way they say he died. You know, I know that there was something more to it, and I know it has something to do with power. He didn't make it to 35. Otis Redding didn't make it. Did he even make it into his 30s? Otis Redding? I mean,
Otis Redding was in his 20s when he passed. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, it's like those powerful brothers setting the course. What it looks like, they didn't make it, and somehow, you know, Sam Cooke was lascivious and he was, you know, doing shenanigans. But yeah, why didn't he have his masters when he died? When that was his whole entire thing. And the people that produced this, what do we do with that?
The same way Mick Jagger was a producer of Get On Up. I mean, in other words, you wait till they die. And see, it's interesting, isn't it, Karen? You and I, we both remember when James Brown, we wouldn't have known it as children, but when James Brown was buying radio stations, remember Mahalia Jackson Chicken? In other words, they were trying, you know what I'm saying? These are not, we remember, that's in our lifetime. And there are a lot of people in here. So,
I mean, Stevie Wonder has radio stations.
Oh, no question. That station in LA that became a center for culture. No, I think chewing up the meat, spitting out the bones is an incredibly difficult exercise under the best circumstances. But when you're in a perpetual crouch to use, and thanks, Kareem, for dropping it in, that was his nickname, wasn't it? Theophilus Stevenson, the touch of death. Oh man, you bringing back memory. It's a lot of people in here right now who never heard. Y'all gonna lose y'all minds watching this brother box. But anyway, so, and of course he was an amateur because they didn't have professional sports in Cuba. So you never would have seen Theophilus Stevenson versus Muhammad Ali, which is, of course, as kids, we want to see.
We wanted that, yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't happen. And he was a little younger, right? So, but that's you know, I'll say this, because of what you created, because of this platform, and because you did it in a plague, when we're all locked in place, it just sent me back into reading. Right, and I told a couple friends of mine in the last couple of weeks, well, whatever time I got left, when you get into it, it's almost like you don't want to do nothing else.
I know.
I had that luxury. See, this 1776 advisory committee.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's talk about these people here. They are supported by institutions. And we always talk about institutions. Individuals don't beat institutions. And if you get too close to something transforming, you might get taken out, like King, like Sam Cooke. You know, I mean, Otis Redding died in a plane crash. Well, you know, plane crash. So you couldn't say, you know, remember during the so-called golden age of hip hop, Stetson Sonic had that song on Africa, Africa, Angola, Soweto, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Zambia, Mozambique, and Botswana. So let me speak about the motherland, right? And there's a line in there where he said, you know, I cried a whole week because Samora Machel of Mozambique was killed in a crash that couldn't be explained. And this is a new book that just came out called Mozambique, Samora Machel, A Life Cut Short. Mm-hmm. You know, we talk about.
Didn't Clemente die in a plane crash?
Sure did.
Because
because he overstuffed a raggedy ass plane. He couldn't get the planes he wanted. Trying to provide disaster relief. 1972. And then he is inducted into the Hall of Fame, or second class immortality in some way. Although they have named an award for him. And that's the thing, right? Henry Aaron. You know,
I was gonna ask, did Ron Brown die in a plane crash?
He sure did.
Okay, I'm just asking.
Yeah, he did. All right, but look, you know, you provoking. You know, you remember, look, those of you who know the rest of that story, y'all go look for it. We won't even say the answer because this is where it gets crazy, right? As the old saying goes, it ain't paranoia if it's true. You know what I'm saying? And it's certainly in paranoia if you have a good reason to believe they after you. It ain't paranoia if they are after you. Now, who they are, who you are, may switch from piece to piece. But in terms of this 76 commission, these people are subsidized. In other words, they are backed by institutions, and individuals don't beat institutions, y'all. So I'll just say this very quickly for an opening thing. Just very quickly, we won't spend a lot of time on this because this is something it ain't going away. because this ain't the beginning of it. This is the continuation of it. The president of the United States Advisory 1776 Commission that they've now taken off the current president's website, the White House website, was chaired by Larry P. Arnn. Larry Arnn is the president of Hillsdale College in Michigan. They got a DC campus. In 2019, they had a visitor. Hillsdale College out of Michigan, that was founded the same year as Notre Dame, 1844, had a visit from a federal judge who stood up May 21st, 2019 and said, "I am a big fan of Hillsdale College." And she said, "The title of my speech today will be the obligation of duty." And duty in the face of intense public pressure to the contrary. This judge who gave that talk would come back in May of 2020 and give the commencement speech. Larry Arnn is the president of Hillsdale College. He is the chair. He was the chair of the President's 1776 Commission. The judge I'm referring to is named Amy Coney Barrett. See, what y'all gonna understand about these people. You think it's a victory because you took something off a website? It's down. You can't. It's not going to hurt us. Fool! Here come the historians. It's inaccurate. I'd be embarrassed. Oh, you think this was about history? You know how many lawyers were on the President's 76 Commission? You know how many people who are connected to the Federalist Society, either directly or indirectly? Victor Davis Hanson, that's one we talked about a little bit last week. Victor Davis Hanson, I know that name. I got a lot of Victor Davis Hanson's work. These cats don't have to be historians. They are political scientists. They are lobbyists. They are former governors, like Phil Bryant was the governor of Mississippi. You better read this. Why? This is their framework and their philosophy. And talk about chewing up the meat and spitting out the bones. We can go, I went page by page in here, but we ain't gonna do it right now. I encourage y'all to read it. We might have to, matter of fact, that may have to be one of those things we do for an enhanced thing. We can kind of go through this and go through related documents, because here's the thing. The fight in this country is a fight over foundations. We're not looking to remember America. We want y'all to leave us alone and everybody be treated fairly. Now, that gets lost in the conversation. The 1619 Project, it seems to me, and knowing either directly or indirectly most of the people who wrote for that, from Nicole Hannah-Jones to, Tam, but Jess, I'm thinking about the people who are prominent names, and I got a chance, Wesley Morris. I met many of them when they came down to the to the Museum of African American History and Culture, and they had a long day seminar, and I participated, on all through the entire day, including a wonderful session with high school and middle school students. Shout out to all the teachers who brought their students from the DMV, the area, to the museum. And, Spencer Crew at the time was the interim director, and my good friend Cashapp Conwell, the deputy director. Jake Silverstein, the editor of New York Times Magazine, the whole crew. Nicole Hannah-Jones, who, is taking all kind of fire unfairly. I think the 1619 Project ultimately is an attempt to recast the narrative of what this country is. And that is heroic work. That is important work. It is not nearly original work, because Black people have been doing it all along in the Black press. It's interesting thinking about, I'll get to that in a minute. That's starting to my Chancellor Williams. We'll come to that in a second. The 1776 Commission seeks to defend the white nationalist rendering. Because here's the thing. We get caught up in what's the truth, what's not the truth. No. There's no truth as such. One of the things they say very early on in the report is that, and let me see if I can find it, because you're not marked all over it, and I write very small. So you all know, those of you who know me, I just hold it up so when I start taking notes, they just get real little. It's smaller than the print, right? So I'm writing there. Take me forever to go through the thing. When they start talking about the idea of facts, like they say, for example, the facts of our founding are not partisan. They are a matter of history. Controversies about the meaning of the founding can begin to be resolved by looking at the facts of our nation's founding. Let's pause right there. That's the first evasion. You can have one fact interpreted many different ways. So facts don't resolve the question of meaning. In fact, fact and meaning are two separate things. So understand why the historians getting caught up on what's factual and not. That's not the point. Can we all agree that the United States what became the United States separated from England? Yes, that's the fact. Now, they did it, and that they did it because they wanted to be free from them, and they wrote documents. Yes, that's the fact. Now, if you want to argue about emphasizing the meaning of those facts, you're going to have to get close to the people who were in the room and the people who are descendants of those who were in the room and how they're looking at it. And you've never asked Black people what they thought. So the 1619 Project begins to gesture toward that recasting. But here's the problem. Here's a deep problem with this. And here's where the thing gets real ugly. Some things ain't going gently into that good night. Some of these things can't be discussed politely and end up in polite conversation. Sometimes you can't have peace without confrontation. This is the man, Lerone Bennett. Yeah, man, I started pulling, I love Lerone Bennett. That was my man. So I started pulling more Lerone. He got a book called Confrontation in Black and White. He's got another book called The Negro Mood. These are little books. And he's talking about how, at some point you got to make a decision. Are you going to confront this thing? Because if you don't confront it, it's going to take you out. It's like going to the doctor. I got a pain in my side. I ain't going. It'll go away. Then when it finally gets so bad in the emergency room, now you got a tumor and it's metastasized, but we could have caught it. When did you feel it? 2 years ago? Confrontation. You know what I'm saying? We're going to die. These people are clear. They are trying to defend the thing that is dying. Now, what does confrontation look like? That's one reason I wore one of my Cobra shirts. I have many of these. Mashariki, Jawanza, Kamal Jawanza, my Indianapolis people. This is when we were in Detroit. This is last year John Conyers was alive. This was the 30th annual convention we had a couple of years ago in Detroit. HR 40. Hey, Joe Biden, Madam Vice President, let's get HR 40 passed immediately. Sheila Jackson Lee, the legislation that she picked up after John Conyers introduced it in just about every Congress, except I think the years Obama, the Democrats had control of all two branches, legislative and executive, and Obama kind of said, y'all pull that off of it. Shout out Barack Obama again for being timid. Confrontation, bro. Confrontation.
All right, tell them what HR 40 is. And before you do that, also, what are the three things? Because there's a lot of conversation about the Biden-Harris administration, their first executive orders or what have you, not black-facing. They don't really care about.
Really?
Yeah.
Karen, how do you answer that? Because I know you've been answering it all week.
Yeah, I'm like, I like wearing a mask for the first 100 days because there still is a pandemic. I'm not mad at that. I like putting money in people's pockets, which is the other executive order to get the stimulus together. I think there was one more. I know folks are mad about immigration. I'm like, why?
Really?
Yeah, we have allowed ourselves to be indoctrinated into, I believe, damaging habits.
It's killing us. It's killing us. Let's be very clear. Let's be very clear about that. We don't have any friends. Okay, and politicians are not your friend. One of the things the 1776 Project does is say that liberty and justice and freedom and all the things that we now say are American values that are being threatened, they say it very early on that our nation, which is a fiction, we talk about that. We probably need another Saturday to talk through this report in detail. Those were reserved for Americans. We think that, and they say here, we think everybody in the world should have them, but make no mistake, when we're talking about them strictly in terms of America. In other words, it's the job of America to guard those things here. We have fallen into this blackface nativism. So that while we're focusing on the domestic agenda of federal politics, please make no mistake about it. In terms of international policy, the Democrats and Republicans don't think differently about the world. The Democrats like to be a little bit more, a lot more exercising of what Joseph Nye calls soft power, influence. So they want to engage and also going to rejoin the Paris Accords. Got to do that because the ball is going to mess up and we ain't going to be here. The World Health Organization, Dr. Fauci, he's the hero. Make him the face. He's going to be the guy to the WHO. And now he's all relieved and everybody's like, yeah, this is great, man. Redoing all the unilateral agreements. See, can you stitch back together the Iran nuclear agreement? And if we talk about those things at all, we talk about them from an imaginary perspective. And we never stop. While we're celebrating the first Black Secretary of Defense, we should be asking, what's your position on AFRICOM? Our family over there in Africa, are y'all still undermining African governments? Joe the Mummy Biden is already, and I shouldn't know why not, because I don't really, who cares? Let's all say the thing that ain't nobody really want to say out loud, which is we wondering if Joe Biden gonna make it 4 years, and you see Kamala Harris in all the pictures. So anyway, so I'm just saying, let's leave it there. But Joe Biden, one of the first things he said last week, we're gonna recognize Juan Guaido as the leader of Venezuela. Juan Guaido is a whole clown, a whole ass clown that has been propped up by the United States government, meaning Trump administration and the Biden administration now, who he said, to undermine and destabilize the government of Venezuela. You can have any opinion you want on the government of Venezuela, on Nicolas Maduro, the man that preceded him, Hugo Chavez. But what you shouldn't do is take sides with them on foreign policy when it involves other countries, because the white nationalism, in terms of how it expresses itself internationally, there's not a difference philosophically, not a much of a difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. So when those executive orders went out, and I'm talking now strictly to the American descendants of slavery folk, I'm talking to y'all dead in your ear as one. You understand? My mama people out of Alabama, my father's people, North Carolina, Tennessee. I'm talking, yeah. My people felt the lash. And let me tell you right now. If you think it's going to be to your advantage, I'm sorry. If you think it's going to be to your disadvantage, because Joe Biden signed an executive order last week that is relieving Liberians of the fear of being deported at any moment, you're fooled. It's nothing out of your pocket. In fact, it is when we have embraced internationally the struggles of people other places that we've made the most advancements here. We might have to even devote a whole Saturday to that. The question of internationalism. Somebody mentioned in Twitter, I started the Grenadian Revolution, and I very quickly went, and started pulling. I got all of Maurice Bishop's speeches. The Grenadian Revolution, anniversary of Grenadian Revolution, 1983. The man that Gil Scott-Heron called the gladiator invader of Grenada, Ronald Reagan, forgive me for cussing, invaded Grenada. And then Clint Eastwood, forgive me for cussing again, makes a movie, Heartbreak Ridge, and Mario Van Peebles in it, and American Negroes cheering for Clint Eastwood. You invaded a little island who was known to white people because that's where a lot of nutmeg come from. But the problem you have is they were socialists. This is one of the things they attacked in the 1776. People can't spell socialism, but we all been taught to be afraid of it. And so, but the problem with Maurice Bishop and the New Jewel movement and what happened in the wake of the independence movements that preceded them, and they got internal conflicts and things going on. The problem is that, as it was stated by the CIA and American agencies, federal agencies, who pursue enemies, foreign and domestic. Foreign enemies, Grenada. Domestic enemies, Martin Luther King. Understand, you might not think of yourself as connected internationally. They always do. And you will never be trusted in this country. But you know what they didn't like about Maurice Bishop? And they said this. They said, Castro, we can demonize him. And we may get some pushback, and we got to get Assata Shakur back. But, he speaks Spanish. The problem we got with Maurice Bishop and Grenada, they're like Cuba, but they speak English. So when Maurice Bishop comes to New York or comes and gives a talk, you don't need no translator. Black people are like, yeah, a luta continua, which is always, why we say the struggle continues in Portuguese, a luta continua, because among other things, the Portuguese colonized the Mozambicans. So when they say a luta continua, they are saying the struggle continues. But guess what? Maurice Bishop comes, he says, the struggle continues. And the cab driver in Harlem is like, yeah, the struggle continues. We got to get rid of this guy. You don't never pick the Americans who are dogging you here over somebody who's taking an L, especially when they look like you. So those ADOS artists, look, that executive order that postponed or forestalled the Liberians getting deported, that's a good thing. Also, they got rid of the Muslim ban. But guess what? The Muslim ban is also an African ban.
Yep.
Nigeria was on that list. So everybody, how do you think you feel? You call yourself ADOS and your best friend is Florence Nwako because she was born in Houston or Nashville or New York City, but her parents or grandparents came from Nigeria and she got family worried about this. Not no more. They got rid of it. And I don't care where you were born. If you say assalamu alaikum, somebody say walaikum salam to you, you on the enemy's list. Especially if you look black. I was asking my students last week, class started a couple weeks ago. I said, y'all tell me, put it in the chat. We all on Zoom. When did Howard University begin to be referred to as the Mecca? They don't know. I said, why? Some of them guessed, and they guessed correctly. They said, Malcolm X, Nation of Islam. Yes, it was the 1960s. Y'all think about this. Who in the hell gonna call a black place the Mecca? Mecca, as in Islam, as in Muslims, as in Nation of Islam, Elijah Muhammad, okay? Malcolm X, understand, Betty Shabazz. This is part of the Black Power. You're never gonna be accepted because there's always gonna be a suspicion you're not with us. This is what the 1776 thing is.
Look, even beyond that, Sam Pollard, that was the
Sam Pollard, yes.
The great Sam Pollard, we were talking this week about FBI, MLK FBI.
Yes.
And, we talked last week about Martin Luther King, 75%, according to the Harris poll, disapproval rating. Black people did not approve of him in 1968 when he was assassinated. But he was you talked about A. Philip Randolph and Roy Wilkins and others. Martin Luther King, the FBI surveilled him 24 hours a day. And they identified him as the most dangerous Negro in America. And they said that they were going to use all of their resources to destroy him. Why? Because he moved away from the Christian nonviolence towards Black nationalism.
Yes.
And that's what
Black internationalism. No, it's not just America.
He wasn't plotting insurrection. He wasn't bringing up arms. His danger to America was that he was able to galvanize people around an ideal that brought them together, black and white, around economic empowerment, around justice, and that made him the most dangerous. So you think about him, the FBI, identifying a man who only wanted freedom and equality for people and money in people's pockets, the right to work. He was dangerous.
He was very dangerous. He was very dangerous. And like you said, I mean, this is why, like you said, when you read Where Do We Go From Here, or you even listen to that last speech he gave, the tour of the mountain, the mountaintop speech there at Mason Temple in Memphis, not the last 5 minutes, not the last 2 minutes. Go hear the whole 41, 42-minute thing where he starts out coming through world history and he ends up at the end. He has been this is why, again, we talked about last week. Vincent Harding wrote the book Martin Luther King Jr., The Inconvenient Hero. He has been edited for convenience. So you can make him like almost a Jesus figure, which is why I remember one time in the National Archives, I gave a talk. They asked me to come down. It was a Black History Month, something. And when we talk about Lincoln, they always want to talk about Lincoln. I said, okay. So the name of my talk was Abraham Lincoln, American Jesus. I said, because somebody got to die. You know what I'm saying? And I used the template of the Trinity. George Washington is the father. Abraham Lincoln is the son. And Martin King is the Holy Ghost. I mean, what do you mean by that? See, you can't never question the father, but he's too far for you. He had division. All of this, by the way, in the 1776 commission, they say, well, George Washington signed to free his slaves. That's true. But the question you got to ask yourself is, how many of them Africans they had in Mount Vernon did George Washington own? And how many did Martha own? And the answer to that question is George Washington, who was given his first African to enslave at age 11, when Washington married Martha Custis, her first husband had died without a will, and she inherited everything, including like 130 something Africans. She had more enslaved Africans than he did. And so when he left in his will, he said, the people the descendants of those who I own, he used to sell them. He used to bargain with them. He used to barter with them.
Used to chase after them.
No, on a judge.
On a judge.
Shout out to On a Judge. And Hercules left Philly like, peace. I ain't never coming back. Yeah, read Erica Dunbar's book. I mean, Erica's the latest one to talk about this. On a Judge up here in New England, like, okay, yeah, I'll come back if you guarantee me freedom of my children. He said, what the hell? He said, peace. And you ain't never gonna see me gone. Let's see me again. What she called? What was the name of? Because she did a children's version, like a young people's version. Never Caught. Erica Dunbar. Go get that. But yeah, Hercules, the cook. We out. When they got to Philly, look, Philly then and now, you know, they trail. They said, we out. We not gonna come. So Washington, though, in his will, yes, 1776 commission. That's true. He sure did. He said, upon my wife's death. Oh, upon your wife's death. And he didn't have the power to free what they call dowry slaves. Dowry slaves mean when he married her, she owned these other Africans. He don't have the power to free them. So not only was the majority did get freed, you wrote in your will that the ones you had the power to free, they should be freed after your wife died. But watch this. Not even a year later, 1800, he died in 1799, I think. Martha freed those Africans, or the descendants of those Africans that Washington had enslaved. You know why? Karen, you're going to love this. Who are Africans to other people? Who are they to each other? Who are Africans to Martha Washington? You're racist. Who, by the way, her descendants moved upriver to a place called Arlington Plantation. The Custis family, one of the descendants married a cat named Robert E. Lee. Arlington, which is now National Cemetery, began life as a plantation with the enslaved Africans of the George Washington family through Martha Washington. And that's one of the reasons why when the Civil War jumped off, two things happened. Number one, I think it was Montgomery Meigs, who was the Secretary of the Army. They started burying people beginning in Mrs. Lee's Rose Garden, saying, you ain't never come back up here, you traitor to the race. I'm traitor to the country, Robert E. Lee. So they started burying people there, and they buried a bunch of Africans out there. If you go with this part of the cemetery where you just see tombstones that say citizen, those are the Africans who had come out of enslavement, and they buried them in Arlington. That's when it became a national cemetery. Number two of the two, that's also where they had Freedman's Village. They had one in Arlington, they had it in Arlington, Virginia, and they had Arlington National Cemetery. Because if you look at Arlington National Cemetery, it's in DC, it's also in Arlington, Virginia. So, I mean, all that's the same thing. Anyway, so this is what you're going to love. Who are Africans to other people? They're things to make yourself proud because you gave them citizenship, or they're slaves or whatever. But who are they to each other? They don't give a damn. In other words, before George Washington died, they was breaking tools. They was running away. After he died, and they found out that those who had been brought and descendants of those who've been brought by him into the marriage. Wait, imagine this. This is where they need to make a movie. Let's get Regina King on this one right here. Or say, Regina, sis, make this movie. Imagine the scene. You in Mount Vernon. The man is dead. The sister comes out the house, which is why I love Malcolm X. One of the things he really did that really kind of hurt us is when he made that analogy between house Negroes and field Negroes. It made us think everybody in the house was a sellout and everybody in the field was trying to get away. That ain't true. Lots of cats that was about that life lived in the house, and there were some Negroes that wasn't trying to do nothing else, was living in the field. So, but at any rate, imagine this: the old man is dead. Sister comes out the house. She didn't learn how to read clandestinely. General Washington left a will. What did it say? Say any of us who he owned, when Mrs. died, we free. Oh, well, shit, let's kill her. Martha Washington found out that there were rumors of plots at Mount Vernon because they had found out that some of them will be freed upon her death. Martha Washington went to the courthouse and freed them Negroes. Like, shit, I'm not even risking it because y'all done found out that he said that y'all free when I die. I can't eat no more. I can't sleep. Oh no, you gotta love our people. They was gonna kill her.
HR 40, really quickly. I don't want to forget that. We got people to ask questions.
HR 40 is the reparations bill. When John Conyers first introduced it, back in the 80s. In fact, this is where the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America was founded. It was people who had been struggling for reparations for years, since the 1890s, Callie House and them, 1930s, 40s, and 50s, Queen Mother Moore and them, the Republic of New Africa, Amari Obadeli, Gaidi Obadeli. Some of them Africans are still around. Shout out to my people down in Miami, all those cats, General Rashid and all of them coming forward. A lot of people writing about it now, and then a lot of people are in it, still doing it. Nkichi Taifa and all the folks are involved in that. Aja Toro, a lot of sisters like Mashriki Jawans and them, Kamal Jawans and them, all the people in Cobra, very important. So 89 is founded in part because John Conyers is in Detroit, which is a major hub of the reparations movement. Reparations Ray Jenkins, for example. I mean, so many people very important in this movement. Conrad Worrell out of Chicago. And I could go on and on and on, but I won't. Herbert Dougherty out of New York. I'm going to talk about a lot of these people. Ron Daniels out of Ohio, by the way. But I'm just thinking about these people. These are people I struggled with who brought me into this thing, trained me into this thing, and who, when I hear people now talking about reparations, you know, I'm glad to see Ta-Nehisi and them writing stuff. And, you know, Sandy Darity's been doing scholarship on it for 30, 40 years. It's very important. But these are the people who, when they see that, they say, good, let's keep pushing. Let's keep pushing. They're not saying don't do it, but they're saying, so the 8 hours people who are coming on now saying that nobody was talking about it until y'all brought it up. Hey, let's use that momentum to keep going too. Let's not beef about this. As you say, chew up the meat, spit out the bones. HR 40 was introduced by John Conyers in the late 80s. House Resolution 40, 40 as in 40 acres and a mule, to establish a commission to study what would be owed Black people, what are the rationale for reparations, and then even the thing to give it. And so what we see now, after Congressman Conyers made transition, shortly after this meeting in Detroit, we were all there for the 30th anniversary. He came and spoke by then, late in his 90s, you know, but still, you know, hey, we got to get this thing. And so Sheila Jackson Lee out of Texas, Juneteenth and all that, you know, I'll pick up the baton. And it was tweaked a little bit to go from not just a study commission, but to make recommendations and proposals. So now, for the first time since the first 2 years of the first Obama administration, the Democrats have the House, have the Senate, and the White House. So it's time now to pass HR 40 because, and y'all go double check me on this, but I'm pretty sure I'm correct. The only congressional terms where HR 40 has not been introduced were the first 2 years of the Obama administration. And people think I come for Obama, but I don't come for Barack Obama. I just ask you to look at the record. And so let me end with this. So that's HR 40. But in terms of, that's legislation, that's coming late. But these executive orders, hearing when some people say that, you know, and I'm hearing this Black people, I've been in conversations with Black folk, and then I don't even get no conversation with, because I ask questions they can't answer. Anybody who's saying, you know, they taking care of immigrants with the border wall and DACA, you know, and not taking care of us. Let me ask you a question. So, is there anyone you know or you imagine who was terrified that they're going to get put out of their apartment in the next couple of days or weeks? That because there's an executive order now that says we're going to forestall all evictions through at least the end of March, and then until we can get into the legislature and pass some more legislation, but at least now you ain't got to worry about it. Is there anyone in terms of food insecurity, SNAP and WIC and all that, because of the executive order now is going to expand those programs by at least as much as 15% in advance of getting this other legislation through? Is there anyone you know who DACA may apply to, who came here not from Mexico or Honduras or Costa Rica? Although for the life of me, I don't understand why you think somehow denying those people is somehow doing anything other than undermining our common humanity. Is there anybody from other places in the Caribbean and Africa who might fall under DACA? When you start looking at these executive orders, are there any of you with student loans? Because those loans, payment on those loans, principal and interest, have been postponed till at least September by executive order. Are there any of you who, I mean, anybody coming up to me saying that, I don't understand, what do you do for us? If you can't answer any of them 4 or 5 questions I just asked, put the straw back in your mouth till you can. Because I swear to God, I don't understand why we think somehow something that we can advance in our interest can also benefit somebody else. This is the core of Martin Luther King's piece. Dr. King is like, you know, we have to advance these Black interests, and they're going to help other people too. But make no mistake about it, I'm articulating them as Black interests. So don't take me as a weak integrationist. In fact, I'm not even, no, this is about human rights. And King, so no, I don't think we stop to think. And well, let me say this other thing too, because I want to recognize it's very real pain. Because I feel it, we all feel it. If you've ever been wronged as a child, I'm giving an example and people can fit it to their life experiences. You ever been in a thing where, you know, you come in and you were deprived of a piece of cake and you want that cake, You've been thinking about that cake all week. You know, argued for the cake. The cake is because you got shorted on cake the last 3 times your grandmama cooked the cake, and you in the kitchen now. You ain't gonna miss this cake. You gonna miss this cake. And then your grandmother brings out this warm cake. It smell good. The whole house smelling like cake. She cut off a big slice. No, not even a big slice. She cut off a little piece and give it to you. Then she cut off a little piece for the kid that you brought in the house just because, you know, you happen to be playing outside. And you looking like you can't even enjoy your piece. And you realize the rest of the cake there, and she's saying, I don't know, we get some money. You thinking, I'm gonna give me a big slice. But you can't even enjoy the slice you got right now while you scheming on the rest of the cake because you mad because your friend got a piece of the cake too. Now, meanwhile, your friend is like, oh man, this is great. Oh, thank you. So why you give him? Look, we want the whole cake. We want a kitchen to bake our cake. We want a house to bake our cake in. But if you're going to get caught up because you ain't had nothing and you try and get a little something right now and you mad because somebody else got something who is equally deserving. Oh, yeah, they're equally deserving because they're human. Don't lose your humanity. Don't lose your humanity on the altar of having been wounded. That is a principal result of the trauma we've been in. And that trauma must be addressed. It must be addressed because it happened to us. And we got to figure out a way to get to that conversation, but it can't be by denying other people who have been wounded their humanity. Oh, I keep saying one more thing, but I should mention this and we'll talk, you know what, maybe we talk about 1776 in full next week, because this is really something we need to go through. But I want to mention one other thing from here.
Before you do, why do you think it's important to talk about the 1776 project?
Thank you, Karen. This is because, well, number one, when you know, we talked about this last week. When you know the patterns, you can see the rhythms when you study the history. I didn't even pull anything really. I just picked up a couple of things that this is from 1988. So that's 98, 08, 18, 30, 32 years ago. This is called Thinking and Rethinking U.S. History. Gerald Horne, my friend Gerald Horne, edited this, developed by the Council on Interracial Books for Children. This was a response to the attempts to have curriculum wars from the other side during the 80s. Karen, you remember this, and I couldn't put my hands on it, but between now and next week, I'll find it because I got like 3 copies. I just couldn't find it. Remember Arthur Schlesinger Jr.? Yep. The early 90s, Schlesinger wrote a little essay called The Dismantling of America. He didn't attack communism, socialism. He didn't talk about fascism. He called it multiculturalism. This is the wars of those you remember, the wars of the late 80s, early 90s. This is the African-centered curriculum wars. These are my homies. These are the elders that really brought me in. Asa Grant Hilliard III out of Texas, then in Georgia, the Portland Baseline essays out there in Washington, the New York Commission, Regent Sanford. This is what got Leonard Jeffries and all them. Charcy McIntyre, remember the New York State Regents, and they were going to do the whole thing to rethink the curriculum. This is not new. One of the reasons you read it is to see what war they're continuing. So that's one reason. Another reason is if we don't understand that this isn't about history, it's about curriculum, it's about education. You got all these college presidents on here. A sitting justice of the Supreme Court who should not be there is very closely affiliated with the Directors College. These are deeply conservative Christian colleges. They're small, but they got money. There's the Heritage Foundation. Like people work here, they got money. They are weaponizing this concept. And so a report, this is not really a report as much as it is a re-ginning up of the battle cry. Everybody's like, we got through inauguration with no attacks. Fool! Do you know the reason that we know 9/11/2001? Because nobody was looking for 9/11/2001. What you think is over because we got past last week and they all disappeared? Where'd they go? They reading this. Or they talking to somebody who did. And they're going to dump money into this is what's being taught at the colleges. They talking about universities are hotbeds of radicalism. I ain't see Amy Comey Barrett. She a commencement speaker, bruh. We know what y'all doing, but no, we don't know what you're doing if we're not paying attention. And the thing that really got me, this is maybe the last thing I'll say for today, is that when we think of our arguments to combat this kind of thing, everything has to be renegotiated. This is why 1619 Project is a threat, because they're gesturing into a direction that makes people think, wait, are they trying to renegotiate the fundamental terms of this society? In the 1776 Commission, and we need to go through this really section by section, one of the things they're very much concerned about is the idea that America has these universal principles that must never be abandoned. And the we they're talking about is a we never negotiated. And so there's going to have to be a confrontation, because we don't want to be confrontational with this. And if we're not confrontational, we're never going to get to the point where we can actually build, because they say at on the first page as well, these facts provide necessary and wise cautions against, watch this, unrealistic hopes and checks against, watch this, pressing partisan claims or utopian agendas too hard or too far. Nigga, you can't come in the house. That's too hard or too far. Now, wait, and you can't build no business of your own. That's unrealistic hope. This is designed to keep us on the plantation. We'll pause there, because we're going to have to get into a chapter and verse. There's a lot more to this, because we really want to go through it, because we're going to talk about Dred Scott. We're going to talk about all the things that are connected to this. This is the same curriculum they've been teaching. Mute.
Okay, so the homework, thank you. So the homework is for everyone to read the 1776 project, or what is it, commission. It's 45 pages.
Well, the first 20 are really the only ones you need, because the rest of it's appendices.
Right, and it's full of beautiful images of Martin Luther King and Frederick Douglass. And I'll drop a link in the description so that y'all can actually, and then we'll go through it next week, because as we answer those 6 questions and just go over them just really quickly.
The first question is what we call the social structure question. Who are Africans to other people? That's really what this report is trying to do. The governance structure question is what we do every week. Who are we to each other? Sometimes they overlap, but now the other 4 questions, they all feed the governance question. In other words, how we govern ourselves. So the next question is ways of knowing. What ways of understanding and being in the world have we created to navigate our experience? So when Satchel Paige says to Buck O'Neill, look, I've been here before. That's a way of knowing. I can't write it down, but I've been here before. Ways of knowing. The next piece is science and technology. So what ways of using technology, what ways of using science have we used? Them little transistor radios, everybody had, but Black people in some ways built a whole culture of identity around listening to those shared devices. I mean, the next category, the 5th of the 6th one, is called movement and memory. As we go through time and space, how do we remember particular moments? So whether it be athletes wearing numbers because their heroes wore them, whether it be Karen and I and a lot of people here thinking about the hammer, Henry Aaron, in a way takes us back to our childhood. How do we remember those moments? And then cultural meaning making, the last category, we ask ourselves, in any specific moment in time and space, how did we mark that moment in space? So in other words, when we see the young sister Gorman, that's a cultural meaning making moment for us. When we see Michelle Obama coming down flawless, when 4 years ago she swept her stuff back up in the bun, Black people immediately in the governance structure was like, we can read that. Nobody, and I'll end with this one. When Howard Marching Band came down and Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris was coming down, and somebody said HU and she said, you know, the white commentators, social structure were like, what did that? Oh yeah, because you don't know. You know, there's a whole, you can't even see. We all out here in the street together. But then what they will do is speculate. I even saw a tweet
or bring in somebody.
Yes,
with melanin who can't tell the difference between Mary J. Blige and. Anyway, I won't go there.
How about that? Or between well, that's the white people in the Congress, between Elijah Cummings and John Lewis. Like, really? That's classic social structure. Or I saw one. Did you see this one? You may remember Wednesday when somebody said that Michelle Obama, or was it Michelle? No, Kamala Harris had on the colors of Alpha Kappa Alpha, her sorority. Because y'all know it's some colors and it's some women's organizations, but you didn't even, so you just, and anyway.
Yeah. All right. You ready to take a question?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Bring this brother in. He looks like he's driving somewhere. Let me welcome in Lee. I don't know where he's from.
Brother Lee.
He's not responding. And can we hear you? Yes. Hi, Lee.
Hey, how you doing, Miss Hunter? How you doing, Dr. Carr?
Oh, good. Good to see you, brother.
I'm doing fine. Yeah, I live in California, but I'm a truck driver, so I done pulled over on side of the road for like the last hour and a half. So I can. So
hey man, be safe out there, bro. You go from coast to coast. I mean, you got a region. How you work?
I go coast to, right now. I just run the 5. I go from Los Angeles up to Seattle and back. But next week I'm actually doing something different to enhance. Okay. Switch up a little bit and coming from Chicago to LA.
Woo! Hey man, be safe out there. Look. That's a fantasy of a lot of us to say we want to be truck drivers, but see, you do it for real, you be like, yeah, y'all ain't about that life. Y'all don't want that.
Yeah, it's a whole life. It's a whole change on the lifestyle. That's for sure.
What's going on, bro?
I don't want to take up too much time, sir.
Not at all.
I got a question. My question, of course, I've been listening to Miss Hunter for since I say 2015, and I didn't want to ask the question because I felt my question was going to be off, but the powers of the ancestors lined it up, and we've been talking about. Professor Hunter been talking about re-looking at everything different. We got to re-examine everything.
Yes.
And as an ex-youth pastor, my thing is the spirituality part of it. Because as we go back and redo this, I know the power that the Black church used to have. I believe in my own opinion that we need to re-harvest that power. But my thing is when you start looking at the Bible and the way it's been it's been the buckle of white supremacy holding the belt together.
Woo!
When you start looking at it, they made a lot of things seem taboo, as far as like voodoo and stuff like that, spiritual stuff. Even though when you go look, I asked my wife, is there voodoo in the Bible? She was like, no. I said, but why did they spread blood on the doorstep, on the top of the door?
Come on, brother.
And I said, there's other parts when even with Saul called up, he called Samuel up. And even before that, when they sacrificed the animals to get the clothing, God had to sacrifice them.
Yes, sir. And Legion, my brother Jeremiah Wright always talks about Legion. Remember when Christ had to cast them demons?
Yes. My question is, how can we go to that, take that to the people and say, hey man, this stuff we got to look at. We may have all been taught wrong. And you know how Black people is with their Jesus. And I'm not saying Jesus is not real. I'm just saying there's a lot of things spiritually that we've been mistaught, misled, like Carter G. Wood said, miseducation of Negro. We had a whole miseducation of spirituality.
Yes.
Because when you go in a Black church, don't nobody call on the blood like we do.
Nobody.
I mean, just look at the white lady. She didn't say that the angels from Europe. She said the angels from 2 distinct places, Africa and Australia.
Yes.
The originals and the original.
Come on, brother.
So my thing is there a way that we can approach the older and the new to try to reharness their power while teaching them like, hey man, that Bible right there, yeah, it's good, but there's a lot of misconception there that we got to, and because people run away from it real quick.
Let me ask you right quickly, where you from?
From Crutchville, Missouri, right off the 55, the original home of Cedric the Entertainer.
Come on, brother. Yes, sir.
I asked you the question about Missouri. I'm the one that asked you the question about Missouri.
Yes.
And I started reading the book, and oh my God, that book got me right now.
Oh, that broken heart joint?
I would have got it the very next day. I ordered it that night.
That's crazy, right?
Man, I mean, they taught us a lot of that stuff, but oh my God, there's a lot of stuff they left out.
They left out, no doubt. See, this is the genius of this thing that Professor Hunter has created, that Karen has created. We get this. These are the conversations we need to be having, man, because you've lived that life. So when you read a book like that, it's gonna hit you much differently. You'll be able to teach much differently than I could, not having come through and come up in that space. Let me ask you as well: what denomination did you work out of? Baptist?
Okay, well, I grew up Baptist, and then when I actually joined the church and started ministry, it was non-denomination. But my sisters was married to a bishop. I mean, the hijab, the clothes all the way down to the ankles, and they Christian, they apostolic, and
Yeah.
speaking tongues and all that.
Yeah.
And we need to, and I know it's some things I done heard them saying. I'm like, well, I just can't accept it, even though I didn't preach. I can't condemn I can't condemn my daughter to hell because she done married her wife.
Yes.
And I just can't accept that.
Well, you know what? There it is. I think, Lee, what you're doing right now is
can I just jump
in? I'm sorry, Doc.
No, and Lee, thank you. I know you're in your truck, and I want to just thank you for pulling over to the side of the road and being safe, and thank you for being a part of this family. You're right about the ancestors. It's so weird. In that documentary, FBI, MLK FBI, Andrew Young says that Martin Luther King said we are insane. We are insane with no guns, no power, no money, that we're out here fighting this. But the galvanizing force was the church.
Yep.
And I asked this question of a bunch of friends of mine back then in the 50s and 60s and 40s, even before that. You talk about Nat Turner, you talk about Denmark Vesey. The church was not about God as much as it was about delivering messages and organizing. And we don't have that anymore. No. For a lot of reasons, primarily because our pastors have been compromised. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it out loud. Yeah, because they forgot. They didn't remember what their role was.
They did not remember.
Much passing the plate and so much building funds and jets and things that they forgot that for Black people, that church, and you've talked about it. And then last week you said something that was nasty. You said there's no record of there ever have been any Hebrews in Egypt in that whole... And I was like, so people like, oh, I was like, y'all ain't ready for that conversation.
Not ready for it.
It will dismantle everything that you were taught to believe. Like, was it Neely Fuller?
Oh, wow.
You will understand this. Everything else will confuse you.
That's right.
We can't have that conversation because so many of us are indoctrinated into this is the truth.
Right.
What we're talking about. That's the slavery. That's the bondage that they're counting on. That when Nat Turner read them same words, it landed differently for him. And he was like, I'm going to follow this book that you gave me. Yes. But they sent them out into the plantation to indoctrinate Black people into a way of thinking about God and Jesus to make their bondage comfortable and palpable for them. Right.
That's right.
This conversation has to be had. I don't know if we are ready to have it. And I love the Lord. I know you love the Lord.
You heard my cry and answered and pitied every moan. As long as you hasten to his. Come on now, we could preach him on in now. But how, Karen? I think, and Lee started bringing it together. What we do is very different than how we frame it. So I'll never forget. Well, that's a story for another day. One of my students, Michelle, she worked for years in Chicago with Reverend Jackson, Jesse Jackson, Operation Push. I'll never forget Michelle, devout Christian, evangelical zeal, good young sister. I had been at Howard probably about 5 or 6 years. We were in my Black Aesthetics class. That's when my classes were small enough to fit in a regular classroom. Now, my lowest class I have 100 students now. So you may have 300, but in this room, we were all sitting in a circle. It's about 40 of us. We were reading together a book by Clyde Taylor, called The Mask of Art. Some of you all may know that book. It's really on whiteness and the somebody just texted me, the disuniting of America. Right. That was Arthur Schlesinger's book. Thank you. The disuniting of America. And I'm coming back to the story, but I should make this point as well. This 1776 project you can get for free in PDF. When Arthur Schlesinger wrote his attack on the African-centered movement, he had pictures in there of Leonard Jeffries, Malana Karenga. He naming the people, Malefi Asante. In other words, it was a hit piece on the African-centered movement. He didn't even know the real G's underneath them. Asa Hilliard, he mentions it, but he didn't mention Jacob Carruthers in them because he didn't know. This is the man who's considered Kennedy's historian. His father was a historian. So people talking about the 1776 project, they don't have any historians. Arthur Schlesinger was a historian all y'all respected, a liberal historian back. Anyway, the book was eventually published for purchase in bookstores. You could get it, but the first version of the book, which is why I got to root around here. I usually keep a couple of copies. I know I didn't put everything in storage. The first versions of the book were printed in hardcover with a slip jacket, little slim volume, published and distributed by Federal Express out of Memphis. They were given away free. So you got to understand intellectual warfare as it relates to curriculum wars. People you think your friend, not your friend. But anyway, that's a whole nother thing. Back to the thing now. So Michelle, we in the room reading The Mask of Art. The thesis, one of Clyde Taylor's thesis, brilliant brother, graduated from Howard University. Actually went to school with Eleanor Traylor and Toni Morrison. They all taught freshman comp when they were in graduate school at Howard or beyond. Clyde Taylor ends up at NYU, film historian. I mean, just a brilliant brother. One of the most powerful people I can say I've ever encountered. There's a thinker, cultural worker. Clyde Taylor's book, The Mask of Art, is really about how whiteness operates in the field of violence that he might refer to as the art culture complex. It's the invisibility of whiteness that gives it its power. So when we say, for example, in our country, who is our? You never even thought about our. Our is where whiteness hides. So you can't fight your way into that without you always being a junior partner. That's why I say, 1619 Project is a powerful, compelling critique and posing an alternate narrative. But when you started with our, you've already erased so much of the governance structure that I don't see how you recover. So when they say, Henry Aaron is a very powerful reminder of how our nation, you don't even know Henry Aaron. In order for it to be our nation, you would have to know him. And he don't want you to know him because it ain't safe. Anyway, so we're in the circle reading this book, which is deconstructing the aesthetics. It's really a book on aesthetics. In fact, the class is called Black Aesthetics, Africana Aesthetics, as I renamed it when I came to Howard. We're reading the book, and we get to this notion of spirituality and spiritual systems. And we're all in a circle, about 40 of us. We packed in now. We're on the second floor of Elaine Locke Hall. Those College of Arts and Sciences at Howard University. We're in there reading, and we start talking about how Blackness retains this African cultural foundation, even as we adapt to whatever culture we absorb. And some kind of way we got on the conversation about spirituality. And we started talking about in meaning making practices. It might fit in those 6 categories under ways of knowing. In the ways of knowing category, for example, the idea that there are spiritual forces beyond the material, what we can see, touch, feel, taste, smell, and how those things you find suffusing in human cultures, including African cultures. And there are many ways in African culture where we find ourselves acknowledging those spiritual forces. And a lot of it has to do with the power of speech. So we're talking about the Egyptian concept of Medu, Nomo, which you see written about everybody from Paul Carter Harrison through who's in theater. There's a German guy who wrote a book called Muntu, which, it's kind of, anyway, try to use Black sources. Anyway, the power of the word, the power of speech. So Michelle is like, that's right. Because when that preacher start going, start humming, instead she all are like 5'1". She rocking in the chair. Now we all been in this conversation. It's been heavy. You can almost feel the energy. And she said, and then he get to the end and he said, I'm gonna cover you in the blood of Jesus. And she said, G, and all of us stood up. Negro started running out the door. Now in that moment, is that Christian? Yes. Is that African? Yes. As Future would say, the rapper, at the same damn time. See, the problem we have often is a lot of things we interpret as Christian, we brought on those boats with us. When I was in Salvador Bahia, this is in 2007, Dana King and the folks at the Scooters of Philadelphia, after we had done the curriculum, we went to Salvador Bahia to have conversations with Afro-Brazilian school teachers about how we compare notes, share, make our curriculums better. We talking maybe like 400 teachers and students in this place in Salvador Bahia. We having this conference, this multi-day conference. And I never forget, during one of the breaks, we're out in the neighborhood looking around. So I'm looking at these vendors because, obviously they think, tourism. And there's this older Black man sitting there, Brazilian. So I'm sure, given the many variations. In fact, Cedric would know about this, who we talked to a month or so ago. I saw this maybe about 4 foot high statue of Jesus, wooden statue. And he had a double-bladed axe in his hand. So I asked the old man, I said, oh, Jesus. He said, see. I said, Shango. He said, see. Okay, is this a Christian or Yoruba figure? The answer is yes. In other words, I think we have to stop thinking about Christianity as a European concept. And this is where Jeremiah Wright is probably the most brilliant single person thinking through. Y'all go look up Jeremiah Wright's talks on this. He's got 1,000 of them on YouTube. Think of it as an extension of African cultures. We just adapted our culture to the circumstances we found ourselves in. Because when you cover, ain't nobody covering nobody with the blood of Jesus like black people. And then white people start overhearing it. And that's when their preachers start taking off. Jimmy Swaggart and in the blood of Jesus. Y'all wasn't talking like that in England. You listening outside the circle on the plantation. And then you took that into everything. So it's very important that we don't give up who we are or condemn folk who we think, oh, you ain't with. Do you see how they're entering and exiting that space? That's very African. I think that's the bridge we build to begin the conversation.
But there are so many of us who are white facing. It's almost like, backwash. They've stolen from us, and then we're drinking it from the stolen. I mean, it's, Brother Lee is saying something. We have had episode 25, 26, 24, 25, and 26. If you go back to in class episodes, 25. Yep, 24, 25, and 26. We talk about God there. If you want to start going down that rabbit hole, we've had now this is our 47th episode, 24, 25, and 26. You talk about the African connection. Remember the book that cost like $1,000 with the underworld? I mean, those are some amazing conversations that will start to extricate ourselves from this white-facing Christianity, which is backwash, actually.
Yes.
Stolen from us and given back to us. And now we're trying, and it doesn't sit right. It doesn't sit right. But it's important that we come to this because there's so many of us who give our life, hard-earned money, our time and energy. We are so rigid in the following of the letter of the law, which Jesus came back to say, so I'm not supposed to heal on the Sabbath? You brood of vipers?
Come on now.
I'm like, we need to have that conversation. Maybe
Lord.
we need to bring your brother in on this one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, you know what? Maybe we could get Jeff in on for sure. We might be able to tease Jeremiah right.
If you can do that, Dr. Carr.
Yeah, I'll put you in contact with. That's
please,
my
let's
man.
do that. All right.
we can. Because I grew up Christian. We grew up in the Christian church, and I don't. I can go to the church, the mosque, the synagogue, the Elay. Go to the Akon. If they're doing Yoruba and see, but I think there is a political bridge that is a bridge too far. And that's the difference. This 1776 project, it says America is the first republic that really tries to do. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, Haiti. See, the problem with Haiti is, first of all, there are no modern countries in the way we think about them prior to this settler colonialism. That's the first mistake of anybody reading this stuff, thinking countries, like when they get to slavery, they say slavery has existed throughout human history. Stop with that bullshit. That's some bull. What does it mean in different places? What y'all did, this is some original, that's on you. But at any rate.
Caca de vaca. Caca de vaca.
Say again.
Caca de vaca.
Caca de vaca. No question. You're right. I shouldn't even say, yes, my man Roach Brown was here. Yeah, that's shiggity. You don't even say it right. But the thing
and
about
that's okay because you quote Future. So I mean,
I ain't
everything
that deep
in the lexicon is at your disposal.
No, I ain't that deep. In fact, 1776 project, they talk about the second Federalist Papers. The Federalist Papers were written to advocate for the passage of the adoption of the Constitution. So they quote Federalist number 2 on the question of equality. And I'm thinking to myself, what about Federalist 55, where Hamilton and them are arguing that black people are property and black people are people. And of course, the phrase is coming from Future at the same damn time. In other words, don't think about these. These are not binaries. They made us into property and people. And Sean Winlitz and them talking about no property in man and all this BS. Anyway, we can come to that another time. But the whole question of Christianity is something we should probably explore. So, yeah. All right. Wait, there was something else. Something else we were just talking about. I wanted to make that point, but I forgot. Anyway, it'll come back to me.
Next week too. We'll be back.
That's true.
We in the 50,000. So your class is 1,000 people. You get 50,000 on the Saturday.
No, I think about look. The difference between our students that we teach normally in the classroom and this, and somebody had to remind me of this because we're not going back to the way it was. Everybody here with us, we're all here together. We're here because we want to be. And I'm not saying the students don't want to be in class, but what we found in the education system, and this, people are going to school because they want a good job, they want a good life, and they want to learn too, and that'll be cool. But the first thing they want is People doing this now because they want to, and I'm just so excited about it.
Yeah, me too. And I love everybody. Thumbs up, y'all.
Yes.
Appreciate you. If you want to ask a question next week, hit me in the DMs on Twitter at Karen Hunter. Also, you can follow Dr. Gray Carr at Africana Carr on the Twitter.
Oh, I'm sorry, Karen. Let me Thursday. That's what it was. I was remembering Haiti. The reason Haiti they can't digest Haiti is because in terms of ways of knowing, Vodun, which is a blend of Fon and Dahomey and Yoruba and the Catholic Church, it cannot be reconciled politically with the white agenda. It's too much. So that's why Haiti has to continually be punished in the Western imagination. It's too African. So it ain't too African because of the color of the people, or it's the culture. And at the center of the culture is the spirituality. That's why when Martin Luther King breaks out of Christianity that says Jesus wasn't about materialism, this guy got to go. You have to mess our money up. It's the spiritual center of what King is doing that would never allow him to get in there. I'm not an electoral. He said, I'm a minister. I'm the son of a minister. I'm the grandson. This guy got to go. Because what he's speaking out of, we don't have any control over that. That's the point I was.
And so our goal has to be to not have them control us with the Bible.
That's right.
Boop.
That's right.
Okay. I'll see you next week. I appreciate you. I love you.
Yes.
Love everybody else. Hey, everyone have a great weekend. We'll see y'all next Saturday.
See y'all.